Galactic Nerd Outpost. I am your host, Joey McGee, aka Gojin the Makai Phantom, and joining me is Trev's Cult Classic Corner.
Howdy, everybody. I have returned.
And Cody Bratch once again. And soon Pharaoh, but Forgotten Pharaoh will be a bit late due to
Hey!
God or something.
You let him do his intro. You didn't let me do mine, you fucking jackass.
But we got a few topics.
Sir, you have royally pissed me off, and I'm not going to play with you at Pacific Playland.
But what we're looking at today is actually quite a few interesting topics. But what we're looking at first is Halloween Ends. Yeah, this movie, there is a lot currently going on about this movie, and it hasn't been very positive for a lot of people. But anyway, I'll let Cody go first on this one.
Okay, so let me say this. If you're trying to reconcile this movie with being a good finale, a climactic end to this chapter of the Halloween franchise, between being a good Halloween-themed movie all around, as in the holiday, not the movie series, then I guess it's fine. But, like, it's a very good Halloween holiday-themed movie. But in terms of, like, being a climactic end to this chapter of the Michael Myers series, this timeline, this continuity, I would honestly say that it falls short by a lot. Mostly because it seems like they couldn't find a way to reconcile the story that they were trying to tell with the new character Corey against the ongoing story revolving around Michael Myers. And
I agree with you.
And because of that, like, among other things, the movie could feel jarring to some people. I'll give it credit for trying to do something new, something far to the left field. I mean, David Green, Jamie Lee Curtis, and a bunch of other people involved with the movie said right off the bat, this movie's gonna piss some people off. It might be one of the more divisive. Shit, I can't talk. One of the most divisive Halloween movies out there, and because of that, like, I saw what they mean, and I don't think it's a good thing the way they were going about it. They were going about like, oh, we're not afraid to take new steps and go in a new direction, but it seemed like more. But now, having seen the movie, it comes across like a sort of shield that they were trying to use against the fact that because the movie was being pulled in two different directions, it kind of came off as meh. And I think a big part of this is the fact that, well, this movie was originally supposed to be shot like right after Halloween Kills was wrapped up, but it got delayed because of, well, the V word, the virus. We'll take this down, Mama Susan. Like, because of the delay, they decided to, like, maybe we should reevaluate what we're doing here. Because from what I understand, all three of these movies were originally supposed to take place on the same night, the exact same Halloween evening leading into the next morning. And they scrapped all that so that they could make this movie that is trying to tell a story about how evil can be infectious and how tribalism is bad. Because even though, like, there's scenery at the end that conflicts with that idea, that makes me concerned. Like, contradictory imagery versus the theme you were trying to tell, that tribalism is bad. Yeah, that's another hit against this movie.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you have to say here, because the thing is, I'll let you finish, because once I go on, I'm going to be going on for a while, so.
Hey, oh, you going on for a while, huh? It's been 5 minutes and I haven't shut up yet.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Joey, if you don't mind, can I give my 2 cents?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so just to let everybody know who's listening, I haven't seen the movie yet. I don't know when I'm going to, but I don't really care about spoilers. If anything, they kind of determine whether I want to see something or not. And I'm kind of a hipster, or a hipster doofus, as Cody would like to call me.
No,
which is probably not.
I call you a filthy rotten hipster doofus.
Exactly. And on that note, I usually like when things kind of break off from the the usual formula and whatnot, because I feel like those are always going to hold up probably the best over the years. But to the points that Cody made, if I'm not mistaken, because I looked into the behind the scenes for this trilogy, what they actually wanted to do is that Halloween 2018 was supposed to be a one-off. They wanted to pretty much tell everything they wanted to tell in that one movie. But as is the curse with this franchise, unfortunately, or for better or worse, pick your poison, it made a lot of money. So they were like, okay, we got to capitalize on this. And it is true that Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends were supposed to take place on the same night as, 2018. But the V word interfered. And so they had to, change their plans. And in all honesty, okay, so just to let everybody know, I've only seen one of these, the middle chapter, Kills. And really the reason for that is that whenever I heard that this continuity was going to completely wipe the slate clean, I was being kind of petty about it, because I was like, okay, so all the stories I got invested in pretty much don't matter anymore. So I was being a little salty about it. But this podcast that I listened to with some very fine gents over there, the G.N.O Horror Podcast, I really love those guys. Their laid back attitude and everything. They were talking up Kills. And, I was thinking, okay, I might give this one a shot and see what I think. And, it came on HBO Max this past March. I checked it out and I was like, damn, this reminds me a whole lot of the original Halloween 2, which is one of my absolute faves in the whole franchise. And I just really vibed with it. So I was thinking, well, damn, now I kind of have to watch these other two movies, I guess. And, I try to, at this point in time, use the free streaming options. And unfortunately, I guess because 2018 is the most popular, they constantly have it available to rent because they want to make as much money off it as possible. But I've seen Kills again because it's on Max. And, that got me intrigued in this new trilogy. And I've heard all these things about Ends, and it reminds me of several things. It reminds me of Halloween 3, and apparently the opening font is identical to the opening font for Halloween 3.
Intentionally.
Yeah, exactly. They were pretty much kind of letting people know, hey, we're going to do something different this time, so please don't hate us. It also sounds like there's some Christine in there for sure. Some Friday part 5, with the copycat angle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to me, it feels like David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, really everybody involved here, has a lot of love for those first 3 Halloween movies and John Carpenter in general, his aesthetic, his music, which, he's come back to help compose the music for these new movies. So it feels to me like this H4O trilogy, I guess that's what we're calling it now, it feels to me like each of these installments, 40 years on from those first 3 Halloween movies, they're kind of repeating the same pattern to an extent, where, you have your basic straightforward entry, which is 2018, which I really wish they had called Halloween Returns so that it's not just another movie called Halloween.
Agreed.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have Halloween Kills. Yeah, exactly. We have Halloween Kills, which, tells you everything you need to know in the title, because that's the Michael Myers movie. If you're a Michael kind of person, like he's like your icon, Halloween Kills is probably going to deliver on that, because, the first movie is about Laurie, and then this one's about Michael. And it's also like Halloween 2, where it takes place on the same night. So it's basically an extension of that first movie. And then we have this one, which is apparently about, Corey Cunningham. So, it feels like it's repeating that original formula. And at the same time, they're doing their best to pay all kinds of homage to John Carpenter and that aesthetic that he, got the ball rolling on back in the early 80s. Now, it's probably not going to work for everybody. And again, I feel like the trilogy probably not near as bad, I guess, as the sequel trilogy for Disney Star Wars, but it does have a bit of that. We kind of cobbled it together, or we had ideas that we were kind of just throwing at the wall to see if they stuck. Because, we had our one-off movie with 2018, and then, oh crap, we got to make some sequels. So, what are we going to do? Well, we saw what they did. And, there's some people out there that I've, read their comments, and they think that it's possible that maybe this movie, Halloween Ends, was actually their original pitch. And they thought it was a bit too out there for a comeback to Halloween because, before this, we had the Rob Zombie movies, and we know how most people feel about those, even though, ironically, each time a new installment, comes into a series, it's like people start to reevaluate these previous movies that they had all this hate for, and they're like, yeah, those previous entries that last time we saw, whichever franchise character it is, those were bad, but they're better than what we got now. It seems like a constant pattern. So, anyways, that's my 2 cents as somebody who hasn't seen the movie, but everything I've heard has me very intrigued. I might end up hating it, but I'll probably let everybody know long after everybody cares. So,
Yeah, form your own thoughts.
If I may, I was thinking the same thing, that basically with this trilogy, since it ended up becoming a trilogy, they were also trying to pay homage to John Carpenter and his structuring of those first 3 movies too. I want to be able to respect that, but in my honest opinion, by trying to do that while also having, a story, an overarching storyline that they're trying to complete, it doesn't mesh, not to me. It's actually kind of conflicting, and it also comes at the expense of Michael Myers in a way, in 2 ways. One, because he's not on screen that much, and when he is, there are times where he's made out to be a bitch. Yeah, I'm going to say it straight up. They make Michael Myers a bitch in some places. Like, there's a scene in The Stewards where he's cowering like a frail old man, and then there's a scene where, this Corey kid actually wrestles Michael Myers to the ground and takes his mask from him and mocks him. And I'm just like, I thought you guys making this were fans of Michael Myers. What the fuck, bruh? And then the fact that they're having Michael Myers actually team up with this Corey kid, I'm just like, that's not Michael Myers to me. That's not the shape, at least not the way that they had been building him up in this series of movies. He was built up to be a cold, emotionless killer. Like, he'll stab a motherfucker, choke a motherfucker, anyone who gets close to him. And it's just like, why is he not killing this little bitch Corey? And why is he teaming up with him? Why is he treating him like a brother? Why are they making this slasher Batman and Robin? Come on now.
Oh yeah, I've heard that too. And my take on it, again, my uninformed opinion. I'm basically just reading stuff around the internet. That's an extension of the Christine inspiration for it, where basically Michael is Christine and then Corey is Arnie. So I think that's what they're trying to do with it. And also, it's interesting. If you remember in Kills, Laurie basically says that each time he kills, he transcends. And then you think about it, for whatever reason, after he killed Karen at the end of the last movie, he basically goes off and hides in the sewer for whatever reason. And in that time where he isn't killing people for 4 years, apparently that affects his power level. So, that seems to be how they're explaining it. Again, I don't have much input because I haven't seen the movie actually, so I'm just going off of the chat basically.
All you're saying does make sense from a perspective. When you explain it like that, I guess that at the end of the day, it'll be a different strokes for different folks thing. And let's just that the way that you put this movie together didn't exactly stroke me, if you know what I mean.
Well, if you think about it, Cody, we're kind of
the only one stroking you is Abyss Kaiser.
Well, how come he didn't show up? But no, Cody, I was about to say we've talked about it off air, so to speak. But we're big fans of the Thorn trilogy, which is kind of a hot take for some people because that's where they straight up go and explain.
It's a hot take for Joey. Just look at his face when we said that.
Yeah, I do not like Curse of Michael Myers. No version of that movie. I hate that movie.
Yeah, but he's a filthy Rob Zombie fan, so
The best Halloween movies is a tie between Rob Zombie's first and also the original Halloween 2. The first Halloween's overrated. I will die on that hill.
Why are you sucking dick on stream, bro?
That's because you keep wiggling your 2 inches in my face.
At least I have 2 inches.
I didn't realize this was going to be a gangbang. I didn't get that invite. But
well, you're here, aren't you?
Well, yeah. I guess I have to submit.
Rob Zombie's Halloween movie sucks.
Truth be told, I'll be completely serious. I need to reevaluate those because it's been so long. I mean, I'll probably still won't like them because Rob, unfortunately, just isn't my flavor of filmmaker. But I don't know. I got to be fair and give him another shot.
Too mean-spirited, I'm guessing, because knowing you, that doesn't really seem like your type of thing.
Too mean-spirited, just trashy. I don't know. It's been so long.
The fact that everything he makes is always loud. Like everything is instantly always turned up to 11, and there's always someone dropping F-bombs like on the constant. Like people don't talk like that. People don't drop F-bombs every fucking second.
It's why be so extreme, bro?
Okay, so here's what my take on how Zombie makes movies. I think he aims more to do a grindhouse-like style, like Quentin Tarantino, new Heiki Muda, and stuff like that. I think that's pretty much what Zombie aims to do with his movies, which is why they're so violent and over the top. Like, same could be said for a lot of adult animation, like Castlevania or Spawn. They're very over the top with the language and such, which, yeah, I agree that can get kinda distracting, but it's kind of like an old grindhouse style. And I think Zombie himself even pointed that out. Like, I think it was Devil's Rejects that has a bit of a grainy look to capture the feel of those old movies. I think he aims to be like Quentin Tarantino, Ryuhei Kitamura, and all those tributes to grindhouse style movies. Just not nearly just he does it for more so in the horror genre. Oh wait, Ryuhei Kitamura does it in horror too with Midnight Meat Train. Which, as much as I love Kitamura, I prefer him as an action director with his grindhouse style over the horror stuff Kitamura's done. But that's besides the point. But yeah,
Yeah, and see what's funny is that I like grindhouse, especially all those old movies that actually were grindhouse, and I like even some of the tribute films like Planet Terror, the Machete movies. I like those.
Machete's fun.
But I guess there's an element of camp there, and it's not as rock and roll, I guess you'd say. I don't know. I definitely need to reevaluate his catalog, or at least those two films, because I am very intrigued by like House of a Thousand Corpses. And I do want to check out his Munsters movie because, that kind of diverges from his usual. But at the same time, it seems like it's, in that same sandbox. Anyway, go ahead.
I actually see a lot of people don't like his Munsters movie, but James Ralph actually gave a more positive perspective on it. And I gotta say, James actually gave a pretty decent defense of the movie and made a lot of valid points. But even that still has a bit of a grindhouse feel, but not grindhouse in a horror sense, but still capturing somewhat of his style from what I can tell with how it looks and such.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I'll admit I'm not a huge fan of him as a director. I think he made some decent movies. Like Halloween's good. It's not great, but I think overall he did a decent job with it. But there's still a lot of tweaks he could have made with it. Same with Halloween 2. I think it's a decent movie, but still, there was a lot of tweaks Zombie could have made to improve it. But I think where Zombie's main talent lays is as a musician, because I think he makes some really, really good industrial metal music. But as a filmmaker, he's good from what I can tell, but it definitely feels secondary to his music career.
Before I move on to talking about more stuff about this movie, because I could talk about this movie all day, honestly, I'm going to say a few things. The first Halloween is the best. Joey's a fucking asshole who doesn't know what he's talking about. And Trevor, you're a filthy rotten hipster, but I like you.
I love you too, bro.
But my thoughts on this particular film, it's
odd. Hold on. I had one more thing I wanted to say.
Oh, okay.
And then I'll leave you. And then I'll leave you alone. Well, actually, I had a few more things to say. You said earlier, Trevor, that this movie's like plays tribute to Christine in a way. Well, I respect the fact that they want to do that because I like Christine and I know it's another John Carpenter movie.
Mm-hmm.
What the? Why am I hearing myself in much more shittier?
Uh-oh. Technical difficulties.
Okay, I think it's fixed now.
Never mind. Okay, hold on. But also, since we're talking about John Carpenter tributes, any of you all catch that that reference at the beginning of the movie when they were watching The Thing?
I did, yeah.
Awesome. Oh yeah, that's right, Trevor. You haven't seen the movie. My bad.
No, it's okay. I mean, go ahead.
The Christine element conflicts with how they were portraying Michael Myers, what the shape is supposed to be at this point, because they build up like Corey's supposed to become the next shape, right? Only, unlike Michael, he has a motive. He's going out for revenge for all these people that treated him badly, whereas Michael has no motive. Even though Laurie keeps saying that he's coming for her, he's really not. He's just doing whatever he wants, and Laurie's inserting herself into his path, which she gets called out on in the second movie, Halloween Kills, by that one cop who ends up becoming a romantic interest of hers that shows up at the beginning of this movie, then disappears, and then shows up again at the end of the movie. I wish he would have stuck around more because I like the little relationship that they had building up together.
I like that actor too.
Oh yeah, he's a great actor. But
yeah,
for me, what all the homaging that they were trying to do doesn't work because, again, it just feels to me like it's conflicting with the overarching story, and because of that, when it does come time to climax the story, it doesn't feel as epic as it should. Because, in my opinion, if they had a stronger story, a stronger tie to the overall arcing story, the climax that we did get would have been awesome, because I think that the opening of this movie is strong with Corey babysitting the one kid, and then the ending would have been strong if they had a better middle that combined them, had a better way of getting from point A to point B.
Oh my, you said climax, and then I just completely forgot everything after that.
Grow up, will ya?
But yeah,
no. Go ahead, Joey. You've waited long enough. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll let you speak first.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it sounds to me like Gordon Green and Danny McBride and whoever else was involved, they wanted to make an overall commentary on the nature of evil and the fact that, we thought they were going to give us an explanation for Michael with kills, like they were foreshadowing the radio tower in the background. They were talking about him only wanting to stand in front of the window and stuff like that. And that made us think, oh, we're going to get a big reveal. But then every time that's happened in the past with this franchise, everybody loses their shit, it seems like. So they didn't do it. And I don't know. It just feels like the town of Haddonfield overall has just been infected by this evil ever since, the original film. And it just keeps on gradually getting worse. And the way it goes down in this is that they're kind of their catharsis to shed that, evil that they've been festering inside, which kind of came to a head with the last film, with the mob violence, which sadly some people make political, and as far as I'm concerned, it can go either way. Mob violence knows no tribe; it just can happen with anybody. So anyway, it just seems like, and I don't know if John had much input on this, John Carpenter. But I'm sure he was like, I never wanted all this extra stuff. I just wanted to have this commentary on the nature of evil. And these guys tried to do their best to, expand upon that. But it seems like the problem with Halloween as a franchise compared to the other, slasher or horror series is that, people kind of want the same thing over and over again, but that can grow stale. And so that's one reason why I like the Thorn trilogy, even though it gets pretty weird, is that they tell us what's going on, and people either accept that or they don't, but at least we went somewhere, because at a certain point the story demands that you shake things up, which I think is kind of what's happening here. And if people like it or if they dislike it, nobody's wrong here. No opinion is invalid in my opinion. It's just you have to let it wash over you, and digest it over some time. I feel like, even without seeing it again, but just hearing about it, maybe this won't end up having like this big cult following like Halloween 3, but I bet people will warm to it a bit over time. I guess we'll see. But, anyway, that's my final 2 cents.
If I may, I
Go ahead.
personally, I don't. For damn it, there it is again. Yes. Okay, testing. It's gone. Fantastic.
Oh, I think I know what it is. I think I know what it is. It's on my end, and I'll stop doing what I was doing. Go ahead, Cody.
You said that there are people that just want the same thing over and over again. I personally am not one of those people. It may seem like I am,
Oh, yeah,
but I'm not. What I wanted was a solid ending for this chapter of the Halloween series, and it seemed like they were going to give us one, and even probably the most definitive ending that the Halloween franchise has ever had, because straight up, they kill Michael Myers. They Fargo his ass. And for people who don't know what that means, it means they basically grinded him into nothing by dropping his body in some sort of shredder at the end. Like, even
they
though
could have been a meat grinder, and they sent him down to Leatherface and family.
oh my! This spoken from a Texan, people.
Yeah, so I'm an authority.
Indeed. So, anyways, when I saw that, I'm just like, yes, finally, this is all done. They can definitively put this to rest. Then I'm just like, oh, wait a minute. Hollywood, much like true evil, never rests. So even though this looks like it's going to be a finale, they're going to find some way to bring Michael Myers back, whether they do a full-on another reboot, or maybe they go with the original Halloween 4 idea, and he just sort of appears out of nowhere one day supernaturally because boogity boogity.
Boogity boogity. Yeah, I'm going to let Joey finally speak because he's been waiting very patiently, but I will say what I think they probably should do whenever they bring the franchise back. But yeah, it's your turn, Joey. I passed the baton to you, bro.
Well, I'll let you finish what you're about to say.
Oh, about my preferences for what they should probably do next?
Yeah.
Danielle Harris has really wanted to come back to the franchise over these years. I mean, she was in the Rob Zombie movies, but she was playing a new version of an old character, Annie. But I think they need to, even with the filthy rotten hipsters that like Halloween 6, they didn't really do her character justice in that. Especially depending on which cut you watch. So I feel like they should probably give Jamie Lloyd another shot at it, whether it's
Agreed.
a one-off that is like a new Halloween 6, another alternative, because that's basically what the franchise is now, is pick your own adventure. But, either that or, maybe mess around with Season of the Witch again and do something in that world. Or this is probably less likely, but, try the anthology thing in the interim until they are like, okay, let's bring Michael back. I don't know. The world is their oyster as far as I'm concerned. And I guarantee that whenever those new movies pop up, whatever they're about, there's going to be people who are like, man, that Gordon Green trilogy was so much better. Because, that's just how people operate, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Me personally, first of all, when it comes to the anthology thing, I think that would have been fine to do when it was new, like when he first created Season of the Witch. But I think Halloween's been around for so long, it would basically be a separate thing as a whole if they just started doing that. But I do think a way they could make it work is tie in Season of the Witch in the same universe as Michael Myers, and then do other things in the universe, and then bam, you got a creative universe of Halloween.
May I ask something?
Sure.
Yeah.
How can they tie it into the Michael Myers series when Michael Myers is a movie character in Season of the Witch?
They could easily retcon that. Like, movies do retcons all the time, so
fair.
What's retconning a tiny little thing like what's on the TV gonna do?
That's a good point.
So I saw on Twitter this really cool pitch that, tickled my fancy as a filthy rotten hipster. And the idea was and it would be kind of a sequel to this movie, I think, based on what they were pitching, is that they do the season of the witch thing, but the whole plot is about Canal Cochran, the old geezer who wanted to kill all those kids in Season of the Witch. He would be the head of the Cult of Thorn, and the whole movie they would be trying to resurrect Michael Myers. And how they had the robots in Halloween 3. Instead of them, it would be a bunch of Michaels. So, and I was thinking, man, that sounds so weird, but I would watch the hell out of it.
Same.
I don't know. We'll see. I have a feeling that Michael and Halloween isn't going to be away for too long.
I was going to say, I do have one last thing I want to say on it, but I actually want to wait to say it until like after you give your 2 cents, because I've been talking over you all this whole time, and I feel so bad about it. But it's just because I got so much to say, because I love this series. I love the Halloween franchise. It's honestly probably my favorite slasher series out there. So because of that, I'm always going to be heavily invested when the topic of Halloween comes up.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I don't mind it. But anyway, when it comes to this movie in particular, you guys already know I am not a huge Halloween fan. Like, I'm barely a casual fan of the series because there is some entries I do like, and even the first film, while I jab at it here and there, I can watch it and enjoy it to some extent. But this movie, on the other hand, my God, like, it's not terrible. I'm gonna say right now, I like it better than The Curse of Michael Myers. That's because I hate The Curse of Michael Myers, both versions of that movie. But when it comes to this movie, I feel like the ending of it, like where Michael Myers gets killed and all that, basically what that's doing here is essentially should have been an ending. It feels like an ending to Halloween Kills. That's what it should have been. But the thing is, they wanted to make more money off it. So what they do at that ending, they bring in an entire nother story just so they could drag the movie out to full film length, just so they can do that whole thing. It takes a while of focusing on the Corey Cunningham thing, which if they wanted to add that, that's fine. I don't care. You can create more plots. You could create more plots of a movie and make it good if you dive into it well enough. But when it comes to the Corey Cunningham thing, it goes nowhere. The thing is, like, for example, him taking Michael's mask, that goes nowhere. And it is kind of funny seeing Michael get his ass beat and then have his mask taken off like a crippled old man. And then when it comes to the ending, though, and for speaking of Michael being a crippled old man, did age finally catch up with him in these past few fucking years? Because he got his ass beat by Laurie. Like, granted, he didn't die till they threw the fucker in a wood chipper, but the thing is, it did not take much to knock him down. He just felt like a normal guy getting beat the shit out of. Like, granted, that what he got, like his wrist and throat cut, that would have killed a normal guy, while him it just injured it just kept him down. But the thing is, I feel like from what we've seen in Kills, that wouldn't have took Michael down that easily from the shit that he's been through. So it's like, is age fucking catching up with this old man or some shit?
Well, yeah. Remember in Kills, it's whenever Laurie and Hawkins, that's his name, the sheriff, they were talking there in the hospital, and she was saying that every time he kills, he transcends. And if he had just kept on, after he killed that big mob, that he just went through like a boss, and killed, and then after that, I think he just kills Karen. And then that's it. And then he has 4 years where he just doesn't do anything. And so to me, that's what it sounds like, the explanation for him starting to, feel his age, so to speak, because he is like in his mid 60s, I do believe, or he's onwards to 70 if you do the math.
Right.
He's not doing his thing, so to speak. So it's like, if you don't use it, you lose it. So it's kind of what I think they were getting at. That's just a theory. That's what it sounds like.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, when it comes to the Corey Cunningham stuff, as a whole, it just doesn't work with the story because, like I said, it goes nowhere. Like I get that he would get tired of people bullying him. Like this tackles a bit of mob mentality, just like the last movie does. And I'll say in this film's case, it makes sense. Like there was a killer, that their monster got lost, and as the mother of Corey Cunningham told Laurie, your monster escaped, so now they need a new one, and it's being blamed on the son. But here's my issue here. He just sort of joins Michael. When it happens, it doesn't really take much build up. The whole thing with the daughter, it's kind of like a reverse Romeo and Juliet sort of thing. I don't know the word I'm going for here, but but the thing about the whole relationship, he talks about her saying that, oh, if I can't have your daughter, nobody can, and slices his own fucking throat. How is killing yourself gonna stop more people from getting her fucking daughter? That's the thing. It's like you'd think he would be going after her, but no, he's not going after her. He decided to nearly kill himself, which is pretty fucking anticlimactic considering he's working with Michael this entire goddamn movie. And even then, the whole thing on that aspect is here's how I think they should have done it. They should have had it where Corey Cunningham was seeing how all the stuff he's done wrong, and then before taking Michael's mask off beforehand, having it where it was around the end where he would end up trying to backstab Michael, and then Michael just ended up killing him. They could have fucking did that. That would have made for a much better transition for it to go. But no, he beats on Michael, takes his mask off. That goes nowhere because after he does that, he goes on to Laurie and slices his own fucking throat, only for Michael to come and finish him off. And this is the guy the movie is focused primarily on here. It doesn't get to what you came for until near the end. It doesn't even feel like it's building up for Michael Myers' end. It feels like the majority of what you're watching of this movie is filler. And that's the thing I really do not like, is because all the Corey Cunningham stuff, which I'd be fine with if it did something, but all it does is it feels like it was made to drag out the main aspect of the movie just so they can make more money off it instead of just putting it in ends. Which I will say, when it comes to the ending, even though Michael is a grandpa, but you kind of swayed me. I am kind of reevaluating my perspective on that because you made a good point there, Trev. But the ending is good because you get what you're looking for. You get the stand down between Laurie and Michael. And I will say, when it was going through all the flashbacks of the old movie, it was pretty nice from all the hatred that finally built up in Laurie and the chance she got to get her revenge on the guy who gave her hell for so long. She's not afraid of him anymore, and she's even saying how he's just a man. So essentially, the roles are kind of reversed between Michael and Laurie in this situation. And even though Michael can't speak, you get the vibes from it that he's terrified of what he's about to face. And from what goes on with his body, they made sure they can't make another sequel to this movie unless they retconned it. So I do think there probably will be another Halloween movie in the future, but it'll probably be either a continuation of the old timeline, or a new timeline altogether, or just a remake, which would also fall in the category of a new timeline, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But speaking of such, when it comes to the characters, they suck. Like the lead guy, again, he's useless. Actor is fine, I guess, but nothing special. Allison, I didn't care about her. Her whole thing is mainly going with with Corey, but the whole issue with that aspect on going with Corey is Corey's pointless. So when your character revolves around him, you're pointless too. But the thing is, one thing I will say, on Laurie as a character, I will say I like how she's basically Dr. Loomis now. She's basically the female him, because it kind of gives you a vibe of what Loomis faced throughout the years, because Loomis has always been a mysterious character with a connection to Michael that just sort of lost his mind. Laurie, she was we've seen how she was when she was younger. She was frightened of Michael. She was more of an introvert and stuff like that. But now, like Loomis, she's much older. She's always fears the comeback of Michael Myers. She doesn't fear him anymore. She just wants to kill the evil. And that's something I like, because not only does it show the growth of her character, it also gives you an idea of how Loomis's dynamic was with the shape back in the day. But for speaking of characters, Michael Myers counts as a fucking character, and I'm gonna say, him getting a fucking helper is not in character for him. He's always that quiet, silent murderer that kills people, doesn't give a fuck if they can help him or not. He just kills them. That's all he does. So it just doesn't seem like something he would do to ask a random person to be his helper. Like, I get he's framed for Michael's murders, but Michael Myers does not seem like the manipulative type. He's just a killing machine. So that just kind of seems out of nowhere for him. Like, it's not as big of a change as Leatherface's change in the new Texas Chainsaw. Which, for speaking of such, it's pretty fucking ironic that Leatherface in the new Chainsaw movie acts more like Michael Myers than fucking Michael Myers here. That's ridiculous.
Amen.
Music is pretty. Music's okay, but I will say
I strongly disagree. I think the music in this movie is absolutely fantastic.
It's fantastic in all three because I've listened to the soundtracks.
There is one I want to mention, though. Like, there's a redoing of the original Halloween theme, and I gotta say, they put it to use quite well on scenes with Michael Myers, and it does create dread. I think it was used around the time Laurie got the upper hand against Michael, and it really just hits you in all the right ways. But as a whole, I didn't really find anything that special, kind of forgettable. It wasn't bad or anything. It didn't distract from the movie. It more pretty much for me was just there. It did its part but there was one track that I did particularly like. Ending it with the Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper. That I thought was also really clever, since the original Halloween is often associated with that one little scene of Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult playing, even though you can barely hear it on the radio, but still, it was pretty cool, and it kind of gives off that vibe that, yeah, it's finally all over, and that's something I really did appreciate, because it was a nice little drawback to that, but at the same time, it was nice fan service, and it feels like a conclusion.
I just want to say that in newer releases, they remix this audio to the original movie to where you can hear Don't Fear the Reaper better on the radio while they're driving by smoking pot.
Oh, okay.
And I also agree with you about the way the song was used in this movie. I agree that makes this feel like an even more proper climax, like a way for them to say, okay, that's all, folks.
Yeah. And when it comes to the victims in this movie, like, you can tell they want you to hate them, because it seems to be going with a way where it wants you to kind of feel bad for Cunningham after the shit he deals with by the city and making everyone act like shit. But here's the issue here. I didn't care. There's so little chemistry with these people other than the stereotypical jocks doing a bunch of horrible shit. It's just not really exciting when they die. Like, it wants you to be happy when Michael kills them, but at the same time, I hardly know them. They only show up at like one or two brief scenes before being taken out, so you don't really get to grow this strong hatred for the people that's being taken down by Michael Myers or Corey Cunningham. They're cannon fodder, and that's something that I do. I just find that to overall be a shame, because it's not interesting. It should have an emotional impact there. And when the thing about movies, when a horrible person is doing horrible things, you should be happy when they're being killed off. But in this case, no, I just didn't care. They're cannon fodder. That's it. And for speaking of Corey Cunningham, Laurie wants Allison away from him at some point in the movie because she quote unquote sees in him what she saw in fucking Michael Myers. What gave that idea? Like, what is she, fucking Yoda now? She's sensing darkness in him? Like, what gave you that vibe? That's not, and saying you sense something in him, that's not a good enough explanation for
If
why
I
I
he
have
was
may,
the answer.
bad.
I
I
have the
have
answer. I have the answer. The
Hmm?
script.
Yeah. She read ahead. That's how she fucking knew.
Yeah.
I actually
No.
do
It
have
is.
an opinion on it. I think that it's part of one of the themes of the movie, next to tribalism, aka mob mentality. Those are the same thing to me, in my opinion. But um, next to it is that evil is infectious. I think that part of it is the fact that over time, as Laurie's encountered Michael more and more, she's also become infected with this evil from him, and that's why she's able to recognize it in Corey the way she does. Because like there's something in him that reminds me almost of me. It reminds me of Michael too, and that's fucking scary.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I guess you can say that, but at the same time,
I don't think it works, but I
yeah,
think that's what they were going for.
I think it would have made more sense that maybe she's seen him progressively showing more of an attitude throughout the movie, or seeing him do vile shit that could have made her make that assumption. Like, with the story this movie is telling, it wouldn't have been that hard, especially since at first she's helping Corey. She feels bad for him. And I'll admit, seeing her help him out is pretty heartwarming and shows how cool Laurie has become as a person. Like, she's no longer that woman who she was in 1970s. She's been through it all. She's been blamed for shit. She's had people insult her. It doesn't affect her anymore. But just out of nowhere, she's like, keep away from my daughter. But he shows no sign in front of her. It's just very unfulfilling, in my opinion.
You know what the
Well,
ironic thing is? She's the one that introduced them.
yeah.
Exactly.
And I was also going to point out, I think the reason why she helps him out is because she's kind of a pariah now too. Because if you think about it, she kind of instigated a bit unintentionally, but she still kind of instigated the 2018 Halloween massacre. So in some ways, I kind of feel like the town kind of looks at her like she's an outsider too now,
Oh yeah,
and
I
that's
agree
kind of
with
why
you.
she's helping. But anyway, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I
It's
agree
part
with
of
you.
that.
That's why I said that she's been through similar shit, as people kind of see her as an outsider as well. That's why the mother calls Michael Myers, says my son is hated because your monster escaped, so they needed a new one. So
Yeah, yeah.
so I did like that, but
Yeah,
at
it's
the
part of
same
that same commentary about the mob mentality / tribalism being bad. Like everyone's looking for a finger to point their finger at someone. Michael's gone, so they'll point it at Laurie and this kid, making another connection between them.
yeah,
Or
and
the source of all our evil, all of our problems, has to be one person or a group of people.
yeah. Which, something I will say, the thing with Laurie and that old man, they seem to have wanted to build chemistry between the two, but they talk like twice, if even that, before the end. And when they talk, to be fair, like, I will say here, like, it's cringy, but it's done, like, in terms of writing and acting here, it was kind of spot on, because when they talk, it's like, Mom, it's like, Mom, Grandma and Grandpa are flirting again. That's what it's like. But
Well,
that's the
it's
point. That's why it
yeah.
worked. But the issue here is, how am I supposed to give a shit about these two's relationship if I hardly know who this old man is? He's only on like twice before he has like one brief show up at the end. But that aside, there's nothing there. They could have done something with it. They could have explored more of Laurie's softer side as outside of that Loomis-like persona we've gotten from her. That would have been nice, and they were hinting at it, but it goes nowhere. Like a lot of aspects of this movie, it's all filler.
Well, here's my take on that. Going by Halloween Kills, he was in that flashback at the very start of the movie, and he was played by the actor who was one of the soldiers in Kong Skull Island, if y'all didn't know that.
Huh.
And anyway, they imply that, he always had a thing for her, like they knew each other back then. but she had the hots for, Ben Tramer. So he felt like he never had a chance. It's kind of one of those will they or won't they, the one who got away type deals. So I think that factors into the fact that we don't really see a lot of it because it's one of those things that's probably not going to be, even though maybe it should. So I don't know. That's just my 2 cents.
Well, the thing is, I do see what you're getting at, but I also think that in terms of that type of dynamic, if they're going to add it in, at least explore who he is more, because all we get of him and his feelings towards Lori is these tiny things. And the way Lori talks to him also implies that over time, she's gained more of a romantic interest in him as well. So it just kind of feels like padding, but that's a lot of this movie. It's padding to really lengthen out what you get towards the end, which is what everyone came for. I think a lot of the ending, which is really good, should have been a part of Halloween Kills. But the thing is, they wanted to make it a trilogy. That's what they wanted to do, but they didn't know how to make it a trilogy. They didn't know how to put it out into 3 films.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, excuse me. His name is Hawkins, you goober. Are you an ageist? I'm just kidding.
Okay, so really, honestly, I don't know what else to say about the movie. Like, I'll admit I wasn't bored with it. I wasn't exactly entertained, but I was just I was watching. It didn't hurt to watch, but at the same time, it didn't, oh wait, let me check private chat. All right,
Be right back, he
back.
said.
Okay, but I wasn't bored with it, but I wasn't exactly having fun either. It's something that I can have on, but that's about it. Now, oh yeah, and one more thing I want to say about the soundtrack. There is one other track that I thought was actually pretty decent, and that was on the scene when Lori was talking to Cunningham's mother. On that scene, there is a lot of solid. The music has a bit of an atmosphere to it, almost sounding like something from Silent Hill, and it kind of matches the mood considering the depressive state that's currently going on in his life, and Lori being able to relate to it, considering that Lori herself, as stated, has been put under that mob mentality and treated like that type of shit. But the rest of the music for me just okay, but there are a few highlights to be found.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, everything I've heard, I'm very intrigued to see what I think about it because it sounded like a lot of people hated Kills, and I ended up really really liking that one. That's what convinced me. Okay, I'm gonna watch the rest of this trilogy. So it's like I guess all I can say is that I'm intrigued, and I'm usually trying to be open minded, with whatever they're trying to tell. So
Yeah, and I liked Kills, honestly. A lot of people didn't, but I thought it kind of offered a lot of what you came for. This film only offers what you came for at the fucking end. And if you don't want to have much Michael Myers screen time, by all means, you don't have to. But don't make the rest feel like filler. Make the rest of the movie a connecting narrative.
I'm back.
How I feel. That's just how I feel. And Cody, I know you were going to say something, but what were you about to say?
Oh, I was going to say a few things. Like I said, I could talk all day about this. First of all, here's another thing that makes the Corey stuff feel like filler, to Joey's point. They kept on trying to build him up to be this new overarching killer, this new threat. What was the point of it if they were just going to kill him at the end? I wouldn't have been opposed to that if there was a better payoff to it, because I don't think what we did get was good enough. But before I move on to how I would have done this movie personally, I want to talk about some positives, actually, because I actually think there are some. Like I said, overall, it's a good Halloween holiday movie. The beginning with Corey babysitting the kid, in my opinion, is actually quite strong. And then the gratification of seeing someone having the balls enough to actually give a very definitive Michael Myers kill, even more so than the fire, in my opinion, from Halloween 2 and the headshot from H2O. That, I gotta say, that impressed me. I'm like, good on you, David Green, for having the balls to say, no, you're gonna kill this bitch. And also, the cinematography and atmosphere of the movie is phenomenal. All 3 of these movies have had wonderful cinematography. All the angles, the editing, the lighting, the mood, the ambiance, it's wonderful, and it's extenuated even better by the score. I know Joey said he didn't care for it, but I personally find the soundtrack as a whole to be outstanding.
There was a
So
few highlights. Like I was just mentioning another highlight when you were gone with Trevor, and I was on that scene with when Laurie was talking to Cunningham's mother, as it kind of had an atmosphere similar to what you'd get from Silent Hill. But that's the bare gist of what I said. I don't want to go in this massive repeating session of what I already stated.
yeah, I'm
Well, that's
sorry.
nice
I'm
for a
sorry I
change.
walked away. Sorry again. Say that again.
Oh no, I just said that's nice for a change, Joey. Thank you for being so generous.
I'm sorry I walked away. I was called away.
Oh, it's
Oh
okay.
no, it's fine, bro. You're fine.
Here's what I would have done with the movie instead of what they did. Instead of like doing the whole trying to make Michael Myers Christine and then make Corey Andy, I would have it to where Corey, like Allison, they're just two sort of outcasts who are brought together because, well, nobody else wants them. So they're just like, okay, we'll stick together. And then I would have Laurie supporting them and also trying to move on because that's another good thing with this movie. She's trying her absolute best to move on and be the cool grandmother and just try to have a normal life. She even moved into a new house, even though there's, straight up, there's always that lingering in the back of her head, wondering when she'll run into Michael Myers again or when, like, he'll start doing this thing again. Because, like Joey said, she's basically the new Dr. Loomis, but in this movie, she's trying her absolute best not to be, even hooking up her granddaughter with who she think would be a presentable enough boyfriend, because, well, she knows that deep down he was a good boy and he didn't mean any harm to that kid in the beginning. However, during that, I would also have that old cop guy whose name I can't remember and I feel bad. I would have him in the movie more, with him helping to repair Laurie's life more by, well, being a shining light in it, and have him and Laurie do more romantic stuff. Not have him be there at the beginning and then show up again at the end. But there's a monkey wrench thrown into this. Michael Myers, because he ends up killing, by coincidence, all these people that were being mean to Corey, Laurie, and Allison throughout the whole movie. And they all start to get blamed for it. Well, more so Corey, because, well, mob mentality, tribalism, and whatnot. But Corey's doing his absolute best to convince them, no, it's not me. And it finally leads to him, Allison, and Laurie going after Michael Myers and actually seeing visual confirmation of him being the one doing the killings, because they'd actually see him killing those people in the junkyard, because those kills were so fucking cool. That was another awesome thing. A lot of the kills in this movie I actually enjoyed. I would have enjoyed them a lot better if it was Michael Myers doing them by himself and instead of Corey. And like, it would end with Corey sacrificing himself to, like, protect Allison and Laurie and have some sort of way to prove it to everyone, like they get to see it later, whether it's recording or it's a live stream, whatever. And they're like, Corey's not the monster we thought he was. And then have it play out basically like it did with the final showdown between Michael, Laurie, and Allison that ends with them taking him to that meat grinder. Except I wouldn't have that mob there because, again, all those people coming together like a mob conflicts with the whole anti-mob mentality and tribalism thing, in my opinion.
My brother actually gave an interesting concept of what they could have done with the Corey Cunningham thing. While I still think it's weird I still think it's weird and out of character for Michael to get a helper, but at the same time, they could have still done something interesting with it. Like, if they're going to bring a subplot like that, maybe if they wanted to build up to it with a proper transition, have it where Corey Cunningham, for the variety of the movie, is doing the killings like he ultimately does in the final product, but don't show Michael Myers at all till around the end. Like, make it where once Corey Cunningham is dying, have it where Michael shows up, grabs the mask, and then bam, we get that ending that everybody wanted. You would have actual build up for it. The context of Corey Cunningham being there would have purpose behind it, and then it wouldn't be filler. They could have fixed a lot of problems doing it in that format. Still, that's something that actually would have worked, but since he just since they didn't, Corey just suddenly killing himself, well, nearly killing himself for Michael to come and finish him off, all around just feels like padding for what ultimately feels like a movie they only made because they didn't know what else to do with on bringing it into a trilogy, but they wanted a trilogy really bad.
I like my idea better.
You know what's interesting and what the tag team thing makes me think of that they didn't really capitalize on, it sounds like, but it would have been interesting is, okay, so you remember that scene in Halloween 4 where they pick up Jamie and her sister?
I know exactly
And
what
then-
you're thinking.
Yeah, and you have the oh shit moment where it's like, is there now more than one quote unquote Michael? And it's like, oh crap, is there going to be an invasion of Michaels? It's one of the best moments from that movie, in my opinion.
I agree.
Invasion of Michael sounds cheesy as fuck.
But hey, listen, man, we're all cheesy as fuck. Come on.
That is true.
It's true.
But that said, I don't really think I have much else to say about this movie as a whole. Like, when watching it, I was stuck between a 4 and a 5 out of 10. But I'm gonna be generous here and go with a average 5 instead of a bad 4 because I wasn't bored with it. But as a whole, I can definitely see why a lot of people are pissed off at it. Do I recommend it? If you're interested, go ahead. You get what you came for at the end. If you're not interested, though, don't make it your mission to watch it. It really depends what catches your attention. But I can't exactly say I recommend it, but I also can't say you should skip it either. It's really I can't really give you much else to say about it since it's such a middle-of-the-road movie. I might lower it in the future, or I might higher it in the future, but right now, an average 5 out of 10, I think, seems natural. Like, it's not the worst thing ever, but it's weird. It's fucking weird, dude.
So Joey, if you're gonna hire it, what's the wage you're gonna pay it?
Ah!
But
Well, what do you give it, Cody?
A big thing that seems to have plagued this series from the beginning is them trying to do some sort of legacy thing with the whole Myers mythology. Whether it's like the guy who was a red herring for the new Loomis in 2018, donning the mask, it almost did at the end of the movie and beat a bigger part because they had to reshoot the ending of 2018. And then in this movie with Corey, that's something that seems to have been a nuisance to this new crop of movies more than anything. Again, I agree with Joey. I wasn't bored by this movie, but it is not worth the sum of its parts, in my opinion. There's a lot that drags it down, despite there also being good stuff about it. I would also give it a 5 out of 10. I've got a feeling it's going to end up being very divisive because there are some people that actually do like it. I thought it was going to be like 80-20, 80 being those that don't like it and 20 being those who do, but it's actually more 60-40. So I can definitively say that this movie is like the Amazing Spider-Man 2 or the Rise of Skywalkers of this chapter of the Halloween franchise.
it's not a bad point. So you want my closing statement, even as somebody who didn't watch it?
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah, so everything I'm hearing, I'm very, very intrigued to see how it plays out for me in execution. To me, it feels like they kind of wrote themselves into a corner. They really had one great idea for a movie. It was successful. Then they were like, okay, we have to capitalize on it. And then they were basically just making it up as they went along, which unfortunately happens a whole lot. Yeah, to me, I don't know. I love Michael. I have a stronger preference for Freddy and Jason because I think those franchises are overall stronger, perhaps, at least in terms of maybe consistency. I mean, there's people who hate certain things that were done with Friday the 13th, but they're not near as stingy about it as some Halloween fans are. And Freddy's always basically been imagination fuel. So, there's that. I don't know. It's an interesting question if, they should keep on trying. I often wonder, I actually wrote something like this on Facebook. I wonder if maybe John Carpenter had the right idea and that it should have been a one-off movie and then he jumped right into the anthology thing. But, we can't go back in time and see what if. So here we are right now. So yeah, I guess I'm most definitely intrigued to see how it goes.
Personally, I think that they should stop I think the Halloween series should be done. But let's face it, a big brand name is never going to die until
Well, the
people
funny, yeah,
until
go
people
ahead.
try to until people just decide that it's time for them to die. Like the audiences stop coming because if they don't come, they won't make the stuff. Ask the Terminator franchise.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very good example. And also think about it again with the writing themselves into a corner. That included the advertising. I mean, they kind of emphasized the final face-off between Laurie and Michael. That's what they were putting in all the trailers and the spots and whatnot. And if you think about it, they really couldn't have sold the movie as it actually is. You just had to end up going and make of it what you would. That's another problem is that sometimes you have one thing and then you have to ask yourself, how do we sell it? You know? And I would tend to agree with you, Cody, that maybe we should stop or stop for at least a while, maybe another 10 years or so before,
2070?
yeah, exactly. Kind of, well, I don't know. Probably if they wait a little bit, it'll probably be, 2028 because that'll be in the next anniversary. And I think it was about 10 years between Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 and Halloween 2018. About 9 years, actually. There we go. So yeah, I don't know. Part of me thinks maybe they should just call it a day because we have 13 movies, which is odd that Michael made it to 13 and Jason hasn't made it to that yet. And his franchise is called Friday the 13th. So, that's what's funny about it. So yeah, I don't know.
Coincidence.
A coincidence? I think not. No. But yeah, I definitely want to check it out. But part of me thinks maybe they need to stop, especially if they can't deliver upon, what the fans want. It just seems like there's only so much gas in the tank.
I will
Yeah.
say one last thing before we move on. I want to say so much more, but we're already an hour and 10 minutes in, and I gotta stop myself at some point. You can easily just watch 2018 and then not watch the rest of these, and they'll be okay. That'll be a good definitive ending, in my opinion. Even though I like Halloween Kills, despite some problems I have with that movie, it's not necessary. If you want a good definitive ending, 2018 is the way to go, because I think that 2018, for all its shortcomings, is a genuinely good movie. Halloween Kills can't be judged on its own because it relies so much on being a middle chapter, and Halloween Ends, like Joey and I have been elaborating on, is a big disappointment. Now I'm going to stop talking about this. God damn it!
But that said, let's move
Pick
on
your
to
own adventure. That's my final word. Pick your own adventure and pick where you want to stop.
But that said, let's move on to the controversy of the cancellations around the HBO Max cancellations. Is that what you said we should do, Cody?
Oh, it goes much deeper than that. Like Warner Brothers, ever since it was bought by Discovery, it's been a whole mess all around. There's been cancellations on both HBO Max and Cartoon Network for cost-saving purposes. Freaking stuff's been being pulled or shopped around. People have been getting laid off behind the scenes. It really seems like creator-controlled cartoons are the place where, when it comes to Discovery, Warner Brothers under the new regime, Discovery Warner, I guess it's called now. Like, it's the place where creator-controlled cartoons and movies go to die, honestly. Hell, Cartoon Network itself might not exist as it is anymore. The Cartoon Network brand name might be done because it's getting folded into Warner Brothers Animation as a whole. It used to operate sort of on its own with support from Warner Animation, but now they're being merged so that they can lay people off and cut costs. And it's just like, wow. Fucking wow. Even this one show, Final Space, even though people bought it on Amazon Prime, it's going to get pulled. It's most likely going to get pulled, they say, despite people paying to see it, which ties into what I said about buying streaming stuff online. Even though you pay for it, you don't technically own it. It can get pulled at any moment, and that
Exactly.
Final Space cartoon might end up being a prime example of that. So yeah, basically, Warner got fucked over by the people who were supposed to be saving it. even more so, ironically, because even though they were trying to cut costs, apparently they've cost themselves over $7 billion doing this whole thing. And that's mostly from like stocks and stuff.
So here's my 2 cents about that. It's not going to be a whole lot, but I do kind of follow it because for better or worse, with the Warner Bros. Discovery merger thing, the Snyder fandom, both the sensible among us and the complete and totally batshit insane idiots.
Who, me?
Snyder cunts.
No, not you, Cody. Definitely not you.
The Snyder cunts.
Yeah. I'll just say one thing about that. The Snyder cultists who really don't give a shit about the movie, Zach, or anybody involved in it anymore, they're just projecting their own personal miseries onto that situation and co-opted it. That's basically what it is now. All the sensible of us in that movement have moved on and we're ready for something new. But anyway, I could go on and on about that. But anyway, I've been paying attention to it because, there's been this interest in what, Warner Brothers is going to end up doing with DC and whatnot. And if you didn't know, Joey, and I think you know this, Cody, they shelved their Batgirl movie that they were going to release at some point.
I was actually going to talk about that, yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But, okay, so about all the other stuff, they were kind of in between a rock and a hard place, it seems like, if you look into it, because the previous regime were making all kinds of bad business decisions, it sounds like. And David Zaslav, who, is the head of Discovery and now the head of Warner Bros. Discovery, he's a businessman, so he thinks in terms of numbers. And he was looking at all these things that they inherited, and he has to make the tough decision of, okay, how do we get ourselves out of this debt that the previous owners accrued for themselves? And unfortunately, there's some things, cartoons, original films, and whatnot that have to be put on the cutting block, and we'll try and recover after we recoup our costs. That's what it sounds like. And it's a real shame because, there's the sequel to Scoob that was supposed to come out. Cody brought up the original animated shows and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
It really sucks, but this kind of stuff happens all the time when it comes to power transfers, is that there's always something on the cutting block if it hasn't already been released. And it's just a real shame. I'm of the mind that we should, wait and see how things pan out, how they recover. But it's no doubt unfortunate, the losses that they have endured currently, or, well, the people who have had to endure it because they were given the green light by the previous owners, and then somebody else comes in, and then it's like, well, all that work was for nothing,
Right?
Yeah.
That's who I'm most like sad for, is the people making their original content. Now, I personally probably wouldn't have watched these shows because I don't go seeking newer cartoons, because most of them have just not been my thing. But still, these are passion projects for creators, and I can get down with that. I have a passion project of my own I'm working on in a book that my editor wanted me to change, and I said, no, I'm not going to, and now I'm having to like self-publish. But because of that, I can understand like the hardships they're going through. They're the ones that I'm most like sad for, not the ones working on the established names like Batgirl and the Scooby-Doo Holiday Special / Scoob sequel that you mentioned.
That's a very good point, because those people got it even worse.
I wanted to see the Scoob special, and I would have been at least somewhat interested in Batgirl to an extent, but I don't know when I would have watched it. Okay, I'm sorry, Joey. I cut you off. I am an asshole.
No, it's all good. It's all good. When it comes to
We're all assholes here.
When it comes to my take on the whole situation, I'll admit I'm not overly informed on it, but I do know enough to say a bit. When it comes to the cancellations, I have to agree with you. I think the real issue here lies in lies in the people that are making these films and TV shows, because many people do forget the film industry is a passion job. You don't pursue it for the sole purpose of making money. People pursue it because they want to make money off doing what they love. And
it's also very cutthroat. Once you
Yeah.
enter that business, you have passion and everything that drives you, but you never know if something is going to completely be seen to fruition. But anyway, go ahead, Joey.
Exactly. But other than that, when it comes to the cancellations, you also have a lot of people that are partying about it, like going that, oh yeah, Galactic is not happening, and it's like, it's kind of weird to be happy about something's cancellation. And for first of all, the people that are being laid off of the work that they put in. Second, there is people out there that do like it. Like, even if the work is very fucking bad, and I mean objectively bad, there's still someone out there who's gonna enjoy it. So I just don't understand that type of mindset. It just seems like a middle finger. The only time I can kind of understand it, like with the Resident Evil TV series, since when it comes to that show, it's like, okay, maybe you want someone who will handle the license better. But a lot of these things, some of this is completely original work, I think. So I just don't understand it.
Well, here's another unfortunate thing about it is that with some of these, I think the Batgirl movie was like this, maybe Scoob, hopefully not, the Scoob sequel, I mean. But with these shows, and also they made them tax write-offs, which was to get back the cost, which, factors into paying off the debt, right?
Right.
And the problem is that legally, once you make something a write-off, you don't necessarily destroy that product. You shelve it because you can't legally release it once it's become a write-off.
The only way that you could profit off of that is if you paid back the money that you got from the tax write-off.
Yeah, exactly. So it's rather unfortunate because, with some of these things, we may never see it. And it's like, again, what Joey was saying, whether it's objectively, quote unquote, good or not, if you release it, that's up to the audience to decide whether it's good or not, because somebody somewhere will like it and it will gain a following,
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. But I mean, when it comes to words like objectively, I just want to get that out of the way. I don't think objectively means like everyone else is wrong or everyone else is right. I think it more means that you're judging things solely off how you think it's executed in quality, more so than whether or not you like it. Like, for example, a friend of ours, he doesn't like the old style of talking in old movies and thinks it's bad acting, but that's a
I wonder
preference.
who you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like, that's a preference. Execution is how they bring that character to life, the emotion that's put in, and whether or not it matches that character.
I want to say, originally when I heard about this, I'm just like, well, the people working on the brand names, like the Scoop thing and the Batgirl, they're just hired guns. Because let's face it, sometimes when it comes to these bigger brand names or some other movies in general, they're just like jobs. They're just like days at the office. There's really no passion put into it. Not always, but because, again, like Joey said, the film industry as a whole was built on passion, but some people just do jobs for the sake of it. Because going back, going back to Halloween really quickly, John Carpenter did not want to make Halloween 2. It was something like the studio was insisted on, and he's like, fine, I'll write it, but I'm not going to direct. He, to this day, doesn't like Halloween 2. He considers it a piece of crap, even though personally I think it's currently my favorite Halloween movies though so far. But
bro, it's mine too. Fist
mine's
bump.
a tie between that and Rob Zombie's First.
Uncultured swine. But then I think about the fact that apparently the directors were very upset that their Batgirl movie didn't get made. I heard there was like tears at the funeral viewing that they had for it. And apparently one of them even tried to steal a master copy of the movie before it could be destroyed, because apparently they're just going to destroy the movie. Like,
what's the purpose in that? Why can't they at least post it on YouTube or some shit?
Oh, again, I think it's a legal thing. Is that they would have to they have to. Well, now that I think about it, Zack Snyder kind of got. Sorry, go ahead, Joey. What were you saying?
They could. Why not just release it as a fan film?
Well, it was funny because when they were building up to, well, actually, it was before it even became a movement. But Zack Snyder on, whatever social he uses. I think it's Vero. He was releasing, pictures of his cut, which, was starting to create a little bit of a buzz. And, he thought, well, I'm never going to get to release this. So, I might as well just show people some stills that I have. So, it's kind of unfortunate that, I don't know. I can't remember. I can't pronounce the names of the directors for the Batgirl movie, but it makes me wonder if they could try something like that. I think there actually was a few things that are out there if you look hard enough, if they haven't been scrubbed. But the problem with that movie in particular, it sounds like, aside from the fact that, with the whole tax write-off thing, is that going forward, they're going to have like a complete overhaul to an extent for the DC properties. So if a movie doesn't really fit into what they have in mind once they restart, they kind of don't want to release it. And I think that kind of factors into it. I mean, it's another one of those movies that is or was going to feature Michael Keaton's Batman, and I would have loved to have seen him. But, it is what it is. I mean, it's unfortunately one of those things that's out of the control of the people, at least the way it seems like.
It's funny that you mentioned Michael Keaton's Batman, Trevor, because from what I understand, like, there's a part of this whole eternal, like, reorganization is that Michael Keaton, they were originally gonna push him into the spot of old Batman and leave Ben Affleck's old Batman in the past. Apparently now they're trying to rearrange everything and put focus on Ben Affleck as old Batman again. Keaton's back out.
True. And I go ahead. Sorry.
Basically, I was going to say Keaton's back out and Affleck's back in, but those are just rumors right now, from what I understand.
That's true, and I have a little bit of insight from what I've looked into what's going on with that whole situation. But that's a talk for next week, probably after a certain movie drops. But yeah, it's very interesting the way they're going with things, and there's a whole bunch of things that are up in the air that we don't know about. But it definitely sounds like they're at least trying to get their shit together. And more to the point that you brought up, Cody, about the fact that these streaming things, if they don't release them physically, you basically have no control over how you see them. Basically, I mean, if they're not on the service, it's like, okay, you just don't see it. There's apparently a bunch of shows and movies that were HBO Max originals that were taken off there, kind of without any notice, but they were put on various rental sites, for rent, obviously for renting. And it sounds like that was part of the whole, again, paying off the debt thing. It's like, okay, let's put this stuff that I guess wasn't performing very well onto other platforms where you have to pay for it.
I honestly had no idea that they were doing that with the whole rental thing, because the way I understood it, that they were just taking it off and would never see the light of day again. Glad to see that it's being distributed, at least in some extent, then.
Yeah, that's what I heard. One of the movies was the Anne Hathaway remake of The Witches, I do believe, because that was an HBO Max original. That's one of the ones that was taken off, but you can view it elsewhere. You just have to pay for it. So, for some of this, people don't need to freak out. They're just trying to do whatever they can. Again, it's all this debt that they inherited. They have to pay it off somehow. And again, chopping block, or, we have to put some things out there, and whore them out for money, using crude terms there. But I mean, that's unfortunately how it's working out. So
yeah. Unfortunately, the people at Discovery were put into a awkward position where, like, they had to find a way to settle all this debt that they inherited, and so far they don't seem to have been doing a pretty good job of it, because again, they've lost $7 billion in stock for the companies. It's gotten to the point where I hear that even they themselves are trying to sell Warner Brothers to someone else, and from what I hear, NBC is the top contender for that.
Yeah, I heard about that. But of course, Zaslav made a statement where it's like, we're not for sale, which, maybe he's bluffing, or maybe he just doesn't, want that to seem like a sign of weakness, because it would be, because it's just a recent acquisition that has happened. So it's like, it doesn't look particularly good.
Let's face it, Hollywood is full of a bunch of two-faced sons of bitches that say one thing and then do the other.
Yeah, they'll say one thing today, and then it's something else tomorrow. We just have to sit back and see how it plays out, because I want to try and give them the benefit of the doubt. Because if I'm being honest, and this sounds selfish, but there are some of these things where I'm like, well, I didn't even know they were a thing, so it's not any hair off my back, so to speak.
For
So
sure.
I don't particularly care. I mean, that sounds really bad, but it's honestly how I feel. But hey, we'll just see how this develops. They could very well just keep on fucking up. But, only time will tell. I want to try and give them the benefit of the doubt.
For sure. And I also want to feel like I should point things out in addition to what Trevor added about the whole rental thing. Apparently, they're also shopping a few things around. There was a Batman show they were working on, an animated one that was
Oh,
supposed to be
yeah.
an HBO Max exclusive. They're shopping that around, and they were working on 3 different Looney Tunes movies. One is canceled altogether, and then the other 2 they're shopping around because apparently there's still people out there who like the Looney Tunes. Yay.
Yeah, so some things might have new life. They just they'll have it at a different place. They have to find a new home.
For sure, for sure. Okay, our fearless leader has disappeared for some reason, so I guess it's like up to us.
It's time to bullshit.
Is there anything else that you could add to this whole conundrum with the whole Warner Discovery HBO Max thing?
I don't know. Again, my interests as far as that platform goes are, I guess, narrow comparatively speaking. So I'm not super concerned about it. I mean, I heard about these things and I was like, oh, well, that sucks. But I mean, what else can we, especially, the general public, what can we do? I mean, we can start campaigns and stuff like that, but ultimately it's up to the powers that be whether or not these things will change. And if they have to do something, they're going to do it.
Right on. Like, I feel like there's more that could be said, but I've used up all the information that I know personally about it. I probably should have done some more in preparation for this. But during your stance and what I know, and the fact that Joey Dunn disappeared, I think we said all that there is. We said all there is to be said about it. So, what do we do now?
I don't know. Should we move on to the next segment? Probably not, because he should introduce it.
Yeah, probably. So until then, 99 bottles of beer on the wall, 99 bottles of beer. No, I'm just kidding. We're not gonna do that. So, you were talking about your interest in the Halloween Thorn trilogy before. Maybe you could go into more of that, since you and I are both fans of the original Thorn timeline.
Yeah, it's funny because that's the timeline that decided, hey, you know what? At some point, we're going to have to explain what's up with this guy because there's really nothing else we can do, right?
Right.
And to an extent, if you think about it, I mean, I guess the original 3 films as a trilogy are not quite as, throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, because, the second movie logically made the decision, we're just an extension of the same night. And, if John had his druthers, that would have been the end of the Michael story. But the problem with that is once they brought him back for another film, it was like, okay, Michael is the face of this franchise, and that's what people are always going to associate with it. I'm glad he came up with Season of the Witch, because it's actually a very good film on its own.
Absolutely.
And it's funny because people say it should have just been called Season of the Witch. Well, the problem is that there's a George A. Romero film called Season of the Witch, and then there's the Nicolas Cage and Ron Perlman Knights versus Witches film from more recent years that's also called Season of the Witch. So it would kind of get lost in the shuffle of these different, films with the same title. So it needs to be called Halloween 3 for better or worse.
Right, because then there will be more eyes focused on it, because they're like, oh, I know Halloween. Let's look at this.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like, it shows people that, okay, this is where the franchise was like, okay, we need to try and go in a different direction, possibly. But unfortunately, at that time, the audience had made their choices. And, it was like, hey, where the fuck is Michael Myers? But I'm glad that the film has achieved a cult following in recent years. But yeah, I'm sorry about that, Cody. I kind of went off on the first three movies, but yeah, the Thorn trilogy is definitely an example of Michael is our cash cow, but what the hell do we do with them?
You know
And
what?
I'm glad.
One
Go
day
ahead.
we should all just get together and have a general Halloween film series discussion and
Oh,
make
yeah.
that the whole podcast, because then fucking we don't have to worry about time. We don't have to worry about tripping over each other. We can just talk about anything we want to talk about that's Halloween related with no worries for the rest of your days.
Absolutely.
Hakuna Matata.
Absolutely. Hakuna Matata, exactly. Anyway, Joey, you okay? Everything good?
No, I'm fine.
I'm
But
sorry. I'm sorry that you had to leave. Why? Did some giant mutant bats break into your house or something?
No,
Did they steal all your potato chips?
No, I was putting a coffee away for later.
Damn, all the sour cream and onions gone.
You and
But
your
anyway-
coffee. Boy, get off that stuff. It'll kill you. Caffeine will kill you. Go straight.
Caffeine will kill you.
Go with Christ.
But anyway, is there anything more to say about the Warner Brothers stuff?
We were actually really wondering if you had any more to say about it.
Honestly, not much. I think I pretty much said my piece on it. Tragic, and it's a shame that a lot of stuff had to get canceled. But at the same time, a lot of the stuff didn't exactly catch my attention too much. Like Scoob was pretty. The first Scoob was just. I'm not a big Scooby-Doo fan anyway, but
No. Let's face it. Let's face it. If there was some tokusatsu on the chopping block, he would be all up in it.
He'd be like, "What
I
the
say it
fuck
with
is
love.
this
I say it
shit?"
with love.
but yeah, either way, it sucks. But I don't really know too much about it. But still, shame that a lot of these people had to lose their passion projects, and I think it's dumb that they have to legally destroy a movie.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's how it goes sometimes. Like, except with some very noticeable exceptions, I don't think like anyone's ever getting into this business looking to backstab anyone or would ever think that they were going to, but that sort of happens sometimes. And I think in this sort of situation, you can't help but sort of make someone feel like they got stabbed in the back, even though it's really nothing personal. It's just business.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Shitty business, but
Day in, day out part of the business, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So Joey, Spidey the Mighty?
Yes. Let's move on to the Spider-Man topic. Trev, you go first.
It's supposed to be like our history and how we got into him, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I do believe, because I actually haven't read near as many comics as I want to for both Spider-Man or any of the characters that I'm interested in, really. I'm trying to do better about that, but we'll see. But I think my very first exposure to Spidey was the 1990s animated series, which I think it was for a lot of people in our generation or younger, like in the case of Joey. But yeah, that show, I think it turned out to be, it was actually the first episode, which I didn't know that till later, Night of the Lizard. That one really
Nice.
That one really captivated me because, it's Jekyll and Hyde, but Mr. Hyde is a big lizard. So I was captivated right away. And then I was like, oh, there's this red and blue spider guy. I guess he's cool. And then I think I saw the alien costume arc, those 3 episodes that were about that, which introduced Venom. And I was like, I really like this Venom guy. And at some point I had to have seen the Return of Venom episodes, at least the first one, which, established Carnage. And really it was these side characters, these villains that captivated me. But over time, the more I watched this animated series, I started to really become invested in Peter Parker and obviously Spider-Man because, he was the main character of the show. And, I watched that for a long time during the Fox Kids showings of it. I don't know if anybody else watched it that way, because I do know there were some DVDs that were released later. Unfortunately, not the complete series, much to my chagrin, but there are bootlegs. And it's also on Disney Plus. So there's one benefit to having Disney Plus is you can watch that whole show, among other things. But yeah, I watched that tune for several years, and then the first Sam Raimi movie came out. I didn't go see it in theaters or anything like that. I believe I saw it on DirecTV pay-per-view. I watched it and I was like, this is very familiar because it does reference, a lot of the stuff that we saw with the animated series, which obviously got from the comics first. And yeah, I was really into that initial Raimi trilogy. I wasn't opposed to a reboot because I did feel like, unfortunately, they had kind of hit rock bottom in terms of the relationship between Sam Raimi and Sony, and it just seemed like it wasn't going to really sort itself out in time for a Spider-Man 4 to come out. And then they did the reboot movies, The Amazing Spider-Man, which I got really into, and my preference for the actors is definitely Andrew Garfield in terms of how captivating it is and how he plays the character. And then we're up to the Disney MCU stuff, which I have to admit I really never gave a fair shot because I felt a little bit what's the term? I felt a little
Bitter.
Like I felt like we had a pretty good run with the first three movies. It felt complete, even though it could have kept going on. And then we got another run started, and unfortunately, it was running side by side with this pop culture phenomenon, which was the MCU. And it felt like I kind of felt this across the board with other franchises too that weren't necessarily Marvel or whatnot. I felt like they were bending the knee to something that was super popular, and it just kind of made me a little bit bitter about this cultural phenomenon with the MCU. So whenever we got Holland Spider-Man, I didn't really have an issue with him as an actor. I think the stuff that I've seen him in beforehand and since, he's a very strong talent. But I felt like my guys, or really my guy, kind of got the short end of the stick. Then we get up to No Way Home, which came out, this last December, and it feels like because they included all of those, live action Spider-Man from the films, it felt like they were giving each fan base a bone, so to speak, and everybody was included. Everybody had a seat at the table, and it went the extra mile in kind of soothing my resentment for what had happened. And I am intrigued to see where Holland's version of the character goes from here. I think Joey will agree with me, and maybe Cody, that I'm not necessarily invested in the MCU as a whole anymore.
Yeah,
I was on that ride, quote unquote, for the first three phases, and even then there were films in those phases that I wasn't too hot about, but I still took the journey. And now it's where I'm like, I just kind of want to see a solo Spider-Man franchise again. And I've dabbled in some of the other cartoons, the Spectacular Spider-Man, which has a very strong fan base behind it. I'm getting into that. I really liked, and I'm one of the minority in this because it has a cult following, the MTV Spider-Man, the new animated series, which ironically spun off from the first Raimi film. But if you watch it, it actually kind of foreshadows a lot of similar things from the Amazing Spider-Man films, particularly the way they handle the Lizard and Electro in that. I think the reason why I like that iteration is because it's done by Mainframe, who were the animators based in Canada who did Beast Wars, which is still my favorite Transformers and what I grew up with. I think that's kind of why I was inclined to like it. The Ultimate Spider-Man show, which it was actually kind of an interesting thing. The Spectacular Spider-Man series was really popular, had its 2 seasons, and then it got canceled because of the acquisition by Disney. And then then the Ultimate iteration came out. It's pretty good, but it had kind of that whole thing where a fan base had got attached to something and they felt like the other thing got tossed out too quickly.
Yeah. Yep. That's how it was with Spectacular and Earth's Mightiest Hero, Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes.
Oh, and welcome, by the way. How are you doing?
I'm very, very happy. My apologies for being late and missing a whole segment. I was at ToyCon and I finally found me some Dinobots. I am happy. I am a happy rally right now.
You missed 2 segments.
Oh, wow. I'm late. But if it makes, I got 1 Dinobot for each segment I was late. So.
Well, there you go.
Yes.
But no, I was kind of rambling there. Sorry, guys. So basically, the gist of it is It's mostly been animated series and the movies that are my history with the character.
Mhm.
But like I said, I've definitely been trying to get into the comics more. And just like the Amazing Spider-Man is probably my favorite live action iteration. I know, I'm a hipster. Sue me. I definitely like those comics from the 80s and 90s, particularly the ones that Todd McFarlane did, where he was the artist.
Yeah.
I
He
definitely like those. So
he
yeah, that's
definitely, yeah, I'll give you that. He had an amazing run going through things. Do you want to try and jump in on Spider-Man? Because they've recently started up the new Amazing Spider-Man issues. Because they kind of keep redoing that every so often. They started up new recently. Do you know what the comics are doing now? If any of you guys are interested,
Yeah, go for it.
Cody, Trev.
yeah.
Before
Please,
before
go
you get
ahead.
into that, I just want to give an alternate way to get started.
Go ahead.
They're doing a whole bunch of these collection things that collect like whole big bunches of issues for past Spider-Man runs.
Mm-hmm.
You see,
Trade paperbacks.
not even that. They're like big essentials. Like you could hit a motherfucker with this shit. You can fucking
Okay.
and yeah, your boy's kind of a fan.
Yay!
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
So yeah, by all means, I would say go for trades. Those are excellent ways of jumping into a fan base, of just going to a comic book store, finding just a book that sounds interesting. Because I started off Spider-Man with the 90s series. It was
Mhm.
fun, but I was never too attached to it. The movies really got me into it a bit more, and then I would go to a comic book store, and I always liked how Spider-Man fought villains. I loved how the Green Goblin was. I love how Sandman was. So I wanted to know, how did these heroes fight the villains? So I would go to the comic book store. I would find like the discount dollar bin section and find Spider-Man versus Sandman, Spider-Man versus Elektra, and I would get one comic of each villain. So I was exposed to it a bit more. As I got older, I would start following more comics going into it. And recently, they just they restarted Amazing Spider-Man, so it's easy to jump into it now because they'll always keep doing it. And the recent storyline is Spider-Man is working for Norman Osborn, who's been reformed by a villain to remove all of his sins. So he's currently a good guy. I say quotes, currently a good guy, because if you know Norman Osborn, he will become a goblin again at some point.
It never lasts for too long.
Yeah. So right now he's working with Norman. Norman made him a new Spider-Man suit. It comes with a spider glider too, and a little backpack like the one Static Shock's friend Gear had. So it helps him solve a bunch of things. It's a cute little concept and idea. Peter broke up with Mary Jane for reasons I don't remember. Mary Jane has a kid, surprising everyone. And it's like, what happened there? What's he doing? He's getting along with Black Cat again. So it's a good spot to be like, oh, it's starting up something new again. And there's a dozen spider stories that go into it. Miles Morales has a really good clone saga, which is surprising because most Spider-Man clone sagas suck. So there's Spider Island, which is very engaging, and that's where everyone on the island of Manhattan gets Spider-Man powers. So Spider-Man has to learn how to deal with this and help everybody, and he learns Kung Fu from Shang-Chi. And he makes him his own fighting style called Way of the Spider, which is really cool.
Yeah, I've actually heard of a bunch of these. I just have to take a bite with one of them and dive in.
Yeah, by all means, if just go to a comic book store, you can either get one off the shelf, or they usually have trades, and you just kind of look through the different trades and read the back, see which one you like. I always try and aim for something that has a specific villain in it. So it's like, I want to see him fight this villain somewhere, and I'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I don't know if you were here yet, man, but I was saying that it was Lizard, Venom, and Carnage who were the villains that got me into the whole thing.
Oh, very good. Very good characters, except Carnage. I hate him. Don't hate. This Carnage is, he's okay.
Well, admittedly, the symbiotes, they kind of are a one-trick pony to an extent. There are writers who try to do different things with them, but I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah. Like, by all means, symbiotes are fun. The ideas are engaging. it just a lot of times Carnage is just very one note of serial killer. He does have fun stories like when he first came out, but since then it's kind of in diminishing returns. Like, cool, we got Carnage. It's like, okay, he's usually some big event, but it takes not a lot to deal with him, and he usually goes out very in a weird way. I'm like, oh, that wasn't like, oh, that was like barely super easy, barely an inconvenience actually. It's like,
Well,
why do we have such a hard time with you?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Norman Osborn was one of the hosts for the symbiote, right? The Carnage symbiote, and he became like the Red Goblin.
That was a fun story. Where do you want to know a spoiler in it or no?
Oh, go ahead. I don't care about spoilers. I'm that guy.
That was an interesting story where he got the Carnage symbiote and he turned into something called the Red Goblin. And that was when Harry Osborn, no, not Harry. Harry was around, but it's also when Flash Thompson had a symbiote also for a bit. He had the anti-venom symbiote, and he was using it to cure everyone that Osborn was infecting, and he ended up dying in that story. Flash Thompson was a really good character. For someone who was a bully in high school, he turned into a really good character that I was like, wow, I'm upset he died. But like most comic book things, he would come back later. But I'm like, wow, Harry was gone for a while, and that was eating at me. That's a really good story. They made a good figure of Red Goblin. It is a terrifying idea of what happens if Green Goblin gets a symbiote.
Oh yeah, definitely. And with comic books, nobody's ever truly gone forever. They're never dead, or they're never away forever. They bring them back because that's what goes.
Uncle Ben stays dead.
Yes, he's the only one, unfortunately.
Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy, they stay dead. And that one girl that he was like the Green Lantern was loving somebody. Kyle Rayner, his girlfriend, she's always staying dead because her
one
job
in the fridge.
Yes, the trope where the woman in the fridge comes from.
Oh yeah, being fridged.
Yep.
Well, they got to have a motivation, I guess. So that's why some people stay dead, because that's what keeps the main character going.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I think I should kind of sort of correct Pharaoh, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. But
please.
Gwen Stacy actually was resurrected and came back as Spider-Gwen, right?
That's in like a different universe.
But didn't like merge with the main Marvel comic universe?
That's complicated because they always merge and then separate the universes out so often. It's pretty confusing. Currently in the 616 comics, Gwen Stacy is not there.
Yeah, Cody, I think what you're thinking of is the Ultimate books, where I think she was actually a host for the Carnage symbiote, probably actually the first in that continuity. I think that's probably what you're thinking of.
No, bro, I'm telling you straight up, there is an iteration of Gwen Stacy that is called Spider-Gwen, and she gets her own version of the
you're right.
powers.
You're right, but she's from another universe, like Pharaoh was saying.
Yeah, but there was a whole big event where the Ultimate timeline, the Ultimate Marvel timeline,
did merge with the real one, yes.
Yes, with the main one.
Okay. I got you.
Yeah, that did happen for a bit, but I think since Secret Wars, that all got subdivided out again. So she's back to being dead.
Oh, well, all right then.
Yeah, I don't know if there's
another frustrating thing.
Book floating around. I haven't seen one that I've noticed, but
comic books are fucking weird.
Yeah,
that's the frustrating thing, is that there's so many reboots and so many, things like that. You have to be really dedicated to keep track of it.
One of the best things about comic books is also one of the worst things. They're throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, both in a fun and a very annoying way, exasperating way.
Yeah,
that seems like entertainment in general, really, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It's tough to get into it because a lot of comic book stories aren't advertised as well either. Where sometimes an event will be going on, I'm like, I have no ideas what's happening, and I'm trying to read comics.
You know what the worst part is? Is all the you know what the worst part is when they have like 100 different tie-ins to like a 6-issue event miniseries.
Yeah, that's usually one of those headaches. That's usually it's fun to get them, but it's like I don't want to read what this character is doing for this one section of the story. I just want the main story elements, but they got to make money. They want to keep making money. So
yeah, see, this is exactly what the problem with the MCU is currently, is that they have been mimicking the comic book structure so well that it's got to that point where there's all this clutter and all this stuff that you're not necessarily interested in, but there may be a character or two that you want to follow, but you have to follow the other stuff in order to get the complete picture.
Or there might be a plot point in one of those things that you're not interested in that might have a direct what's the word? A direct effect on the plot of something that you would be interested in.
Exactly. And comic books have been like that for years. So, I guess it goes to show that some people are kind of good comic readers and some aren't. I guess that's probably another hesitation for getting into them is, figuring out whether or not you want to get invested in these epic, sprawling stories that some of them tell.
When it comes to that, I just kind of do what I kind of do and what I tell other people to do. If you like a character, just follow that one character. See what stories you like, see what they're currently up to. If you want to read more about their backstories, then just find a story or one-off issue and read some of those somewhere. Currently, I really like Thor's current run for the past few years. That's been really, really good. Hulk's been really fun between Immortal Hulk and Smastronaut, which is a hilarious idea, and I love it. So,
you know what I love with the recent Venom comics is that they've kind of tied it into the Thor mythology because of Null.
Yeah,
Null was I believe his symbiote or he himself was what made up Gore the God Butcher's sword.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that sounds pretty rad, actually, because, I like the Thor character and I like Venom. So it's like, cool, they have a connection now.
That's something else you can probably do. A lot of movies are based on previous stories. So when you see a movie, it's like, I wish there was more of this. Find the story it's connected to, and you'll find a much deeper story that we got from the movie.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's no doubt.
Joey, how you holding up in there? You got quiet.
Yeah,
he's soaking it all up like a sponge.
I'm just listening to you guys convo, but one thing I'll say is how I got into Spider-Man. Should I go on about how I got into Spider-Man first, or would you guys like to?
Yeah, go ahead.
How I got into Spider-Man was either the Raimi movies or the 90s animated series, because I grew up with both. But either way, both of those things had a massive influence on how I got into the character. As the Raimi movies, the thing I liked about them is they had this sort of charm to them that a lot of other movies didn't offer. Like, even other Marvel movies that I did like. Like, I think the only other Marvel movie I saw at the time, till the release of Iron Man, was Ghost Rider, which I liked, but Ghost Rider was a action horror movie, so that was different than, say, Spider-Man. So I just saw this hero that overall had a lot of cool things about him, and a villain that had a lot of interesting lore to him, like the Green Goblin. Like, he probably is my favorite incarnation of the Green Goblin, William Dafoe is. So something about how
oh wait, there is another version. Never mind. Scratch that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is those movies overall, I used to watch that trilogy all the time because all of them were so good, and I just wanted to see more of the character. Like, there was Spider-Man 3, and for a while I was just waiting for another Spider-Man movie to be made. So when I heard about the Amazing Spider-Man, those movies were the Amazing Spider-Mans, right? My memory might be fucking up or something.
Yeah, Amazing Spider-Man.
No, you're right.
Yeah, the Amazing Spider-Man. So when I heard about those, originally, I was just a kid, so cut me some slack from what I'm about to say, but I thought those were actually going to be a remake of the Raimi movies. And the thing about that is, obviously they weren't, and when I did watch it, I did enjoy it, and I didn't really understand the hate that the first Amazing Spider-Man was getting, and I still don't till this day.
Those movies do get a lot more hate than what they deserve, because I want to rewatch them. Like, these aren't bad. They're not amazing, but you know what? These are still a nice version of a Spider-Man story.
Yeah. And did you intend to fun with Amazing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. To your point, Joey, technically, it is a different iteration, but one of the things that people complain about with the first one in particular is that it does hit a lot of the same beats as the first Raimi movie, which was only 10 years prior. So it is kind of a remake to an extent, but it still does its own thing and branches off into its own little series.
Yeah, they changed it from the Goblin to the Lizard. I think it originally was announced to be a remake, if memory serves me right.
Really? I'm not
Yeah,
sure on
it's a
that.
good thing that it was a reboot.
Yeah, but the thing is, you had that, and then you had the animated series, which I used to watch on Disney XD, the reruns of it, alongside DVDs that we got from taping them. Because yeah, at the time we didn't have, we still don't have any full series DVD release of the '90s Spider-Man animated series, but we actually would have a lot of episodes of that show. And you know how the show just ends off with a cliffhanger with Spider-Man by Madam Web? At the time, I did not know that that was actually the ending of the show. But then once I rewatched it years later, like for example, for all this time, I thought that show simply had more episodes that I just didn't have access to. But apparently, as a kid, we had that taped on fucking DVD. That's what we did. So when I watched it years later on Hulu in like 2016, we saw the ending as like, well, guess we actually did see the entire show. But
So wait a minute.
Well, it did kind of continue into the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, but I remember
Unlimited.
Yeah, Unlimited. I was about to
Oh,
say
that's
that.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a kid, we watched it. We actually watched Unlimited. We did not know that Unlimited was a sequel, but when it was on, we didn't like it because it was so different than what we originally seen.
Here's the thing about Unlimited. I don't know for sure that it really is a sequel because even though like it shows Spider-Man going to like a brand new place or whatnot, it didn't have any connections to the old show, or at least not from what I remember.
Yeah.
They were very loose, and I don't know if y'all know this or not. I don't know the entire story, but I know the gist of what happened with the animated series. Apparently, Avi Arad, who, depending on who you talk to, is either like the best thing since sliced bread when it comes to Spider-Man, or he's like the villain that Spider-Man never realized he had when it comes to decisions that are made with the character. But
He's shit.
apparently, Avi Arad pissed off the head of whatever network the show was airing on at the time. So she basically decided not to renew it. And that's why the show has its cliffhanger. But Spider-Man Unlimited kind of sort of tried to continue it. It kind of references things that happened in that previous iteration, but it's not like a direct sequel. But
Gotcha. So it's like
it
a
is
soft
kind of the
sequel.
Batman Beyond of that continuity to an extent.
Okay. Well, Batman Beyond later was actually connected to the rest of it by Justice League.
I would say
That's
a
very
better.
true.
I would say a better comparison would be Batman Forever against the two Tim Burton movies originally, because even though it's clear that they try to do their own things, they also have very loose connections to the first two movies, like hiring some of the same actors to play Commissioner Gordon and Alfred.
Very true. Very true. Oh, and Joey, did I understand you correctly? Did you used to record things onto DVDs, like off TV and whatnot?
Yeah, I remember that.
We used to record things
Because
on
I
demand
did that for a little bit too, especially with tapes. Go ahead.
I did that all the time.
Yeah, we used to save things on demand, and then we'll get a videotape and put it and dub it onto tape, and then eventually we would buy these little DVDs at the store and dub from the tape on the DVDs. I couldn't do that now because first of all, I like getting official discs. Second, I like quality, and clearly that's not quality when you're dubbing shit off the tape.
Yeah.
Back in those days, you had to do whatever you could to hold on to them and rewatch them, all right? You couldn't wait for them to show up on TV again. You don't know if they'll come up on TV again.
And I think that DVD recorders, up to a certain point, they started having a copyright thing where you couldn't actually record stuff anymore. And that's really why I stopped doing it, and why I basically just had to actually buy the studio official, releases that, they make in the factory and put out there for everybody, because there was a copyright, it was anti-infringement kind of thing. And it basically was put into all these DVD recorders, and it made me think, okay, so what's the point now if we can't record this stuff anymore? I mean, we don't really need this DVD recorder.
Also able to do it with VHS tapes. I was able to get away with that for a long
That's true.
time.
That's true.
Oh, shit, how did this happen?
Yeah. But yeah, I remember back in those days. Another thing is, but the thing is, when I was also a kid, something that really caught my attention was Venom, Carnage, and the Lizard. Mainly because when it comes to lizard, I've always loved reptiles. I think they're very interesting creatures. So the character I always found to be unique, especially as you described him as earlier, Jekyll and Hyde. And that's one of the things about the Amazing Spider-Man that interested me was hearing about the lizard being adapted into live action. Because prior, my only experience with him was in an animated series format and video games with Spider-Man Friend or Foe, which I don't know how many of you guys know of that game's existence.
That game sucked.
As a kid, I liked it because it was like, oh shit, I get to play as Venom, or I get to play
as a kid, that was fun, but that game sucks in hindsight.
I haven't played it in years, but personally, I have no interest. Also, on the original Xbox, we also played the movie license game to the original Raimi Spider-Man.
When those movies,
did you guys
movies came out? You were like everyone was getting them because, like, yo, I get to play the game. I get to play the movie.
Yeah, and it just expanded. Like, it's a lot like King Kong, the game, as it tells the story of the movie while also adding in more lore and things of the like. Like, the thing about those are some really cool things about certain movie licensed games is they're kind of like extended cuts of movies that you interact with.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something that I always found interesting. But those were my experience with the lizard. So seeing him in live action caught my interest. Though how he looked was a bit of a surprise, since the lizard always just seemed like more of a humanoid lizard than an actual 50% human and 50% lizard hybrid. While in the Amazing Spider-Man, he more of everything about him was like 50% lizard and 50% human. But personally, now looking at that hybrid, I actually think it's kind of cool as it captures elements from both the human race while also still looking reptilian. And he looks...
go ahead.
Finish.
No, what I was going to say, the funny thing about the first movie, and it's actually ironically one of my criticisms for it, and it was something that I was really looking forward to whenever that came out, because, you know, I love the lizard. Unfortunately, they focus so much on kind of retelling the origin that he kind of gets pushed off to the side, and he doesn't have the emphasis that I would have liked. And also the design. The reason why he looked like that is because, you know, he was done by motion capture, and, you know, with a snout, they wouldn't have been able to really capture, you know, the proper facial movements that they needed to. So they redesigned him to where he would look a bit more human, to be more friendly, I guess you would say, to the motion capture process. And he does look like some older 60s iterations of the lizard a bit more. But anyways, go on with what you were saying.
Snout lizard, just personally, but I see what you're going with.
Oh, and something about the lizard here, as I was about to say, no wonder he looks more real than the majority of the MCU CG. They use fucking motion capture. But that's the thing. And the MCU, a lot of it is all over the place because they fucking abuse their workers. That's why. While in the Ultimate Spider-Man, that lizard still looks good till this day. Like, even in his return in No Way Home, he just kind of looked okay in terms of CGI quality. But
he looked like crap.
He actually helped out instead of just acting like a jerk. It's like, no, like, Connors, you're not a bad guy. Why are you being a jerk in this case scenario? Ock's helping out at least. And I'm usually the bad guy.
Honestly, when it comes to the lizard's inclusion in No Way Home, to be honest, he just kind of felt like he was just added in to check him off the list of live action characters.
He was tacked on.
Yeah, which is a shame. They could have done more with him.
Yeah, like Sandman had, like, he was there, but he was still, like, he had presence. There was a scene with him and Electro together. Like, he was helping out for a bit. I'm like, how? And we just kind of get Lizard off screen. It's like, here, I found this lizard guy. It's like, oh, you just kind of get shafted, don't you?
And then there was also Venom and Carnage, the other two villains I fell in love with as a kid, because I always thought the story of a semi-demonic alien parasite taking control of Peter Parker and making the hero more of almost villain-like was interesting. And then when he goes just on another guy, I always found the story to be very unique. And generally, he was the anti-Spider-Man. That's what Venom is.
Yeah.
He was helping Spider-Man at first, but then once he goes on Brock, he became the anti-Spider-Man. That's why he still had elements like the web, the spider on his chest, and all of that. So I found it to be really interesting, considering that he was a more monster version of the character. So when I saw him in Spider-Man 3 as a kid, while he was still cool, he looked like Venom and such, it was weird not having the demonic voice that I was used to in the animated series. Until this day, it's still kind of but...
Well, and to your point, Joey, those two characters are also very visually striking, so they kind of...
Exactly.
They demand your attention.
Exactly. They look cool. They look evil. And that's the thing I liked. And in terms of Carnage, like basically what the 90s animated series was, outside of a few tweaks like adding in a man spider, to my understanding, it's basically the comic brought to screen, just censored down a bit more since kid-targeted comics can go further than a kids-targeted TV show. So stuff like Carnage, like...
Comics don't sell very well, unfortunately.
Yeah, but they could still go further in terms of graphic content. So scenes like Cletus Cassidy talking to Venom and talking to Eddie Brock in jail, basically he was implying that he killed a lot of people in the animated series. While that same scene was in the comic, he went into full detail talking about what he did.
Yeah,
and I think the missing victims. And I always found, but even though he was more subtle about it in the animated series because it was television, I always found him rather intimidating, and the actor, I think, really brought a lot of charisma to the role that just made him creepy, especially when you're watching as a kid, because you just get the vibe with everything around him that this guy is a threat. He's more evil than even Venom. That's something that really caught my attention. And then when I saw them in Unlimited, they didn't even feel like the same characters anymore. Nobody felt like the same characters in Unlimited.
Yeah. Well, you also have to think about the fact that a lot of 90s kid shows, and I think this was true in the 80s as well, they were very heavily, I don't know if censored's the right word, but they were formatted in such a way that they tried to avoid any violent implications as much as possible.
Well, yeah,
if y'all didn't notice the 90s animated show, he actually never punches anybody.
Yeah. It's just a lot of like pushes, shoves, and throws.
Yep.
Huh. It's been since 2016 since I rewatched it, so yeah.
Go back and see it. There's never a punch thrown that entire series.
Except once. It was during his fight with the Spot.
Oh yeah, he punched him and said, well, that hit the spot.
Yeah.
And of course, that's another thing that really caught my attention as him. Like, as you guys know, I'm a bit of a smartass. I think it's funny. So seeing how he badmouthed the... So seeing how he just shit-talked the villains was also something that would really catch a kid's attention on the hero, because he didn't take them seriously. So this is a guy that you could just really look up to in terms of being heroic. Oh, and another thing about the whole Venom thing. I think it was this Christmas this one year. I can't remember when exactly, but one of the many gifts my uncle gave me around that time was this little picture book of a Venom story with Spider-Man. I don't want to call it a comic because it wasn't labeled such, but it was a book with artwork that kind of resembled a comic, but it wasn't. It was just a picture book. That was another thing I had. I don't know if I still have that laying around. I haven't seen it in years. But that was another experience that I had because the love I had for these characters, he knew that it would make a little interesting gift on something he just went by in the store, which I wasn't the only one who loved Venom. Like, my siblings did and do till this day as well.
Aww.
Yeah, that's the thing. And when it comes to the MCU Spider-Man, I'm all for doing different things with the character. I'm all for artists putting things in their own vision. But the thing is, when it comes to MCU Spidey, Tom Holland does a good job as the character. But at the same time, I feel like until No Way Home, they kind of made him a bit on the generic side, but that's the thing about him. He's just not very a Tom Holland Spider-Man, while does have some interesting dynamics with characters like Iron Man. Like, Iron Man had a nice little father figure and son-like relationship with Peter Parker. Many people took issue with that change, but it's like, do you want to see that same story over and over again of his Uncle Ben dying?
I mean, that's what people want, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I do still have my issues with with Holland's Spider-Man, and it's more so to do with until No Way Home, he's kind of one note of just a nice young heroic boy with friends.
I mean, that is Spider-Man to a T. Like, that's
Yeah,
what separated him out from the very beginning. He wasn't a grown adult hero. He was a kid in an area where there's like Superman and Batman and Aquaman and Wonder Woman. It's like these are all adults. Now it's like, no, here's a kid, a teenager, someone else. Here's the sidekick taking front row.
Oh yeah, I agree. Like, I've seen a lot of the stuff based on the comics, and I've read a few of them.
Mhm.
But the thing is, I just don't really find Holland's Spider-Man all that interesting, especially till like No Way Home. Because in No Way Home, he was still that normal, nice, young, naive kid making a lot of mistakes on the way. But he just felt more human to me, while on the others, he didn't really show much different emotions, if memory serves me right.
Okay, think about this. Here's the difference between No Way Home and the previous two movies for Holland. If you really think about it, Peter Parker's life really kind of sucks.
Yup.
He goes through all kinds of personal suffering, and what happens in No Way Home? Everybody knows who he is, although that isn't really dwelled on very long. The fact that everybody knows his identity. But then we have the death of Aunt May, which is basically his iteration's version of the Uncle Ben death.
I never thought I'd see like in live action.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's what they had to do, considering they alluded to the fact that Ben had been there before.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, Holland's Spider-Man hadn't had his moment where, he needed that emotional push. Yeah, exactly. He needed that emotional push to really basically get the baton passed to him and where to become a proper Spider-Man, quote unquote.
Oh yeah, I agree. I'm just saying in the first two movies, he's kind of just one-dimensional, but in favor of No Way Home, they finally chose to develop him more, and it does benefit No Way Home in that regard. And one of the reasons it's one of my favorite MCU movies is the fact that he actually is that knock of reality he gets. He's no longer naive by point. Things of his life is finally falling apart. He's growing. He's still the Spider-Man we know and love. He's still that normal young kid, but at the same time, he knows that everything is perfect. He knows life isn't sunshine and rainbows.
I mean, I'm pretty sure he knew that from the get-go. It's just that's the thing. Spider-Man uses comedy to hide the fact that he's actually upset.
Yeah.
Like, that's how he deals with a lot of it. He makes jokes. He makes light of the situation so he's able to deal with it better.
True.
When he gets serious, it gets pretty scary because he's holding back constantly.
Like in the first Raimi film when actually that's accurate to the source material. I don't know why I'm saying Raimi film because this is normal in a story where he just basically killed somebody. The person he thought killed his Uncle Ben. And the thing about Spider-Man 3 is he still had that inside of him. Like the symbiote, that's what the symbiote was feeding off of. It was feeding off his rage and making it where he was basically just becoming a monster. It did it with Mary Jane. It did it with Harry, and it did it with when he found out the guy who actually was responsible for Uncle Ben's death.
Yes. Sorry, I'm transforming something, and I'm doing it without instructions.
Okay, fair enough.
Transforming a Dinobot without the instructions is like figuring out a puzzle box, but it feels so good when you're able to do it.
Well, when it comes to MCU Spider-Man, Tom Holland does a very good job. I just I can't exactly go too in depth because I haven't watched a MCU Spider-Man in quite a few months, and when I did, I wasn't analyzing it. But if I was to describe it, Holland's performance good, presentation of the character, it's fine. It's accurate to the source material, but still not exactly on the level of Maguire to me. But
I'm pretty sure no one's gonna be on that level for you.
Yeah, but
well, it's like I was saying. My main issue was the fact that I felt like he kind of caused another iteration to be ousted a little bit too soon. So I wasn't really judging him fairly, I suppose you could say. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Anyway, you guys got any more to add on the Spider-Man convo?
The Spider-Man could go on forever, but
Forever.
I showed up late.
Forever and ever and ever.
Oh, but this is something I do want to go into before we go. How many of you guys watched the Toei Spider-Man show? This isn't my favorite iteration, even though it's Toku, but I just
Oh, sure.
I've heard of it, but I haven't.
Spider-Man.
The
Go
Toku
ahead.
Spider-Man show is something I heard about when I was a very little kid, but at the same time, I didn't watch it till like 2021. But that's because either 2021 or 2020. Trev, when did I send you the links to those episodes?
Oh, I'm not sure, bro. It was probably sometime last year, though, I think.
Yeah, but the thing about the Toei Spider-Man is, as a kid, it was like, oh, that sounds a bit goofy, like Spider-Man, a Japanese take on Spider-Man. But then as I gotten older and started exploring Tokusatsu more, it's like, you know what? I'll give this a shot. Especially since I'm a big fan of stuff like Kamen Rider and Sentai, Ultraman, and all that. And when I did watch it, I had a lot of fun with it. Basically, this is a reimagining of the character. And it's done it in its own unique way. Like, you have its own version of Uncle Ben that sets the mood of this iteration of Peter Parker. I think his name was Takuya.
Mm-hmm.
But it's done in a way where it's overall separate. And and stuff like Leopard, and I felt was overall a very interesting touch. Stan Lee actually really liked the show. Because, fun fact, there was an American show that came around the same time. Stan hated the American show so much, to my understanding, he made sure it never got a physical release, at least outside of VHS.
Dang.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, he actually really loved and added him in the comics later.
So
all the Spider-Verse-ish.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't remember exactly when I heard about that version. But I have watched a few episodes, I do believe, on the Daikaiju TV streams that they have every now and then. And also, what's cool about it is, for those who don't know, I'm a big Power Rangers fan, and by extension, Super Sentai. It was the Japanese Spider-Man show that introduced the concept of a giant robot, which Sentai then took and ran with, which eventually, that informed pretty much every Sentai season from, I think, the third version onwards. So without that, Power Rangers wouldn't have had one of its main, shticks, the Zords and everything. So it's very interesting how two of my passions, which are Spider-Man and Power Rangers, are connected in that way. I think it's very neat.
That is a cool idea. That's good.
Most definitely.
I'm in this Transformers puzzle box. I'm happy. Just if you want to find good comics, go to your local comic book store, whatever it is. Just start browsing around, find a character you like, and if you can find a single issue, do that. If you can find one of the dollar comics, do that. Find the bargain bin or discount bin. Some of them you can get for like $1. Some of them maybe like 50 cents. Buy a bunch of those. That's a good way of introducing yourself to comics and being like, hey, I like this character. I want to read more about this. Just stick with one character before you start trying to explore the entire world.
So I should say that I do have some comics. There was I believe it was the first time Peter had the black suit, like in the actual Spider-Man comics. It was sold with an action figure that had the black suit Spider-Man. I picked it up at a Kmart or something a long time ago. And that was I think my first comic that I got. And then later on, I had this long box of the Venom solo comics. And I also threw in the Maximum Carnage arc. So I actually have all the Spider-Man comics that were involved with that particular storyline. So yeah, cool. I've kind of dipped my toes into it.
Yeah,
I love the Maximum Carnage storyline, and I had that same action figure comic combo that you were talking about.
The black suit one?
Yeah, that's it.
And it has the symbiote crawling on the wall behind him?
Yeah, that was the first issue of the Amazing Spider-Man released after Secret Wars concluded, the original Secret Wars,
exactly.
which was where Spider-Man got his black suit originally.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also a random comic that I got from somebody, which has Spider-Man facing off with Ultron in a theme park. I can't remember what arc it was part of, but it's an older comic book, and it was really cool.
That's hilarious. But that's what I do like about those weird one-shots. Like, oh, okay, I guess this is a thing now.
Exactly.
I actually wish we'd get more one-shots, more self-contained stories like that. self-contained issues and whatnot.
There's a couple of them floating around. There's one that I really like called Spider-Man Life Story, which is a section of Spider-Man at different decades of his life, dealing with different problems. It doesn't deal with bigger universe things. It deals with just Spider-Man at like when he was in the 40s, then the 50s, then the 60s, then the 70s. And each time you see him actually aging until it's like modern day and he's super old. Really fun story. There's another one that I really, really like. Give me a second.
5 hours later.
Do 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 do.
Do 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 do. Thank you, folks. We're here all week.
Exactly. You're a lovely audience. Thank you so much.
Spider Shadow! Spider-Man Spider Shadow. It's a one-off story where Spider-Man kept the black suit, and that's always a cool concept, and there's a couple of them. Spider Shadow is the most recent version I've read that I bought. You can buy the trade of it now, and it goes over Spider-Man keeping the black suit and realizing Hobgoblin threatens Aunt May at his house, and he pummels him. And it's like, I want you to tell everyone I'm done holding back. And he beats him and breaks him and leaves him to a tree. And he then is going out hunting down all the villains, either killing them or breaking to the point. I'm like, no. Okay. They're fearing for their lives. So they formed the Sinister Six just to survive him.
Okay, so that's sounds like an awesome Otherworld series.
Spider-Man Spider Shadow. Love that series. It's really fun.
There's also a one-shot in the What If, one of the What If series, where he keeps the symbiote and he ends up becoming Poison, I think he was called. So he's not exactly Venom, but he's this other thing called Poison. I remember seeing that somewhere.
There's a couple where he keeps it, and those usually lead to fun story arcs. I just know the one I'm talking about is the most recent that I've seen come out. So I'm like, that's a good spot to be like, oh, here's something for someone new that's modern without having to go into the history, but you still get a lot of the classic Spider-Man lore with it.
Now, I gotta say, I could talk about Spider-Man for like years, but like so much has been said already on the podcast as is. It's almost 2.5 hours long. In fact, it is 2.5 hours long. I want no disrespect to all y'all. Y'all are some of my best friends, and you're like my brothers, but I want to get off and go talk to my girlfriend now.
It's getting late.
You just want to go flirt with Aaron.
Coffee. Somebody is projecting.
I don't know who Aaron is, but sure.
Kaiser.
Joey, it's time to come out, man. Just come all the way out. It's okay. Come on, we're here for you. We're here for you.
Come on out the closet. Everything will be okay. And if you don't come out the closet, then I pulls out my gun and I said, "Boy, get out the closet and make me wanna fuck Aaron."
South Park is where we probably should draw the line before we get copyrighted.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, I agree with you. Like, Spider-Man is one of my favorite franchises. I read some of the comics, but I haven't read too much comics because when it comes to books, I have to be really, really in the right mindset to read them since I got ADHD. So while ADHD can interfere with movies, TV shows, video games, and music, though music the least, since music is the easiest to multitask with. With books, it often interferes since a lot of time with books, even stuff with pictures, a lot of it still requires your mind to fill a lot of it out, like the movement, the talking, all of it. But what I have read, I did enjoy of the hero. But from what I will always say, when it comes to the hero, the character of Spider-Man, there's definitely a lot of great adaptations of this guy, and he's one of my favorite heroes, definitely. Like,
oh yeah, definitely. I think that's true for all of us.
Yeah, it's like I'm looking forward to hear what the next Spider-Man movies are to come. I hope they do a bit more with the original heroes. Like, maybe make a movie to maybe make the third Amazing Spider-Man movie and throw in one more with Maguire too. That would be fucking awesome. Because here's what I like to look at this: you have the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the MCM being the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. Because and what I mean by that is you have the Raimi trilogy, with the part of the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. You have the Garfield trilogy, but it was never a trilogy, but was gonna be one. That was a part of the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. You have Venom, that's a part of the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse, and you have Morbius, that's a part of the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. So I would be really interested to see a conclusion, to finally get closure on the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and maybe just one more with Maguire. Like, I think it would be really interesting, because they clearly have the rights to do it.
Old man Maguire? Old man Spider-Man?
Yeah, they could just do some really and that age for old man Maguire, I think really could make an interesting movie, especially since we have him at a more what's the word I'm looking for?
Mature.
Yeah, mature age. So he could bring something for a character for how far he's come, especially since how in the older movies he's, like the Spider-Man character tends to be, more immature. So, and we did get a more mature version of him in No Way Home. So I would like to see that in a movie entirely about him, and a movie with Garfield that continues what the Amazing Spider-Man 2 is building up for rather
Oh,
or not
yeah.
you like.
Oh, no, I was just saying, oh, yeah. Well, and also think about this, guys. Part of the reason why No Way Home was so successful, aside from the fact that it was just Spider-Man, is the fact that they brought all these elements back. And the nostalgia alone is one of the things that drove the success of the movie. And people definitely want to see both Toby and Andrew come back. Andrew especially definitely needs a movie to close out his arc. And I don't think it needs to necessarily be what they were supposedly planning, because to be honest, that sounds like a big mess. Even though I'm a fan of the two movies,
Maybe
they had a lot of ideas that were just thrown out there. I think they need to come up with something new that addresses what happened in No Way Home. Same thing with Maguire's potential fourth movie. And I'm also looking forward, I may be the only one, to the Madam Web movie, because I remember Madam Web in the old animated series, so I recognize who she is.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. I have no idea how that's gonna go.
I have an inkling of what's supposed to happen, but I'll save that for maybe another stream.
All right.
Yeah, but that said,
last thing I'm gonna say, I made a list.
Dates?
I've yeah, I named them Joey. Anyways, I made a list a few months back of my top 20 favorite fictional characters.
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man's number 5 on that list, so I should tell you all how I feel about it and how passionate I am about the Spider-Man franchise.
Feels like we should do that at some point. Like, we come up with a list of Spider-Man stories we like, and then just look at the top 10 best Spider-Man stories that was probably made by a person who doesn't know Spider-Man stories.
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
That could be interesting.
Yeah, I love it when they do it on Comic Story. It's really fun. It's like, I want to do that. And I feel accomplished. I can now transform all 4 of my Dinobots without instructions, blind.
Real quick, which ones did you get?
So I have Grimlock, I had Swoop, and I got Sludge, the Brachiosaurus, and Slag, the Triceratops.
Cool.
All I need is, I think, Snarl, the Stegosaurus, and that hasn't been released yet. Or I need to find another variant of it. I'm happy. I'm going to snap.
But that said, unless you guys have anything more to say,
you suck, Joey.
We covered it.
But that was it for this episode. Please comment your thoughts down below, and if you enjoyed it, smash that like button harder than Cody will smash Aaron after this podcast.
Lick my shit.
Also check out the social medias, especially the Discord server. Also check out the Twitch channel if you're watching the edited version on YouTube. I'm still editing last week's podcast because I want it to be as polished as possible. I'm getting an Angry Joe Show vibe of the edited version. I'm liking that. And
it sounds fun.
Yeah.
He's lying. He's been distracted jerking off to pictures of big, strong, muscly men.
I got
muscly men.
I got me some.
Last time I checked, you didn't have muscles, Cody.
I have no idea what you said. I was too busy talking to my girlfriend.
Woo!
No, seriously, what'd you say? Come on, I want to hear you roast me.
Last time I checked, you didn't have muscles.
I'm out of this.
Muscles.
Have a good night, y'all.
Stay awesome, everybody.
But if you want to see the podcast live, the Twitch channel is linked in the description down below because that's where it's linked now. But if you if you just want to sit down and watch the edited, the polished versions on YouTube, feel free to stick to that. Thank you, Trev, Tom, and Pharaoh before he left, and Cody Brett for joining. It's been fun as always.
Mm-hmm.
This is Gojin the Makai Phantom, leaving the building.
Stay awesome,
Sayonara.
people.